Chapter 308. Li Honyuan leaned crookedly on the big pillow with one hand supporting his cheek. His hair was neatly tied up, but the collar of his clothes was a little messy. His whole person was very lazy, as if he was not in the situation. And he didn't get a response for a long time, and he didn't repeat it. He just waited quietly. After about the time to drink a cup of tea, he moved and reluctantly sat up straight. Eunuch moved quickly and calmly served a cup of tea. Li Honyuan lowered his head and took a sip of the nourishing tea prepared by his wife. To be honest, Li Honyuan didn't like this tea very much. Although it didn't taste bad, after marrying his wife, he naturally followed her. For example, he didn't like most of the materials, but his wife said it was good for the body and gave it to him. He could eat it without changing his expression. Say it. Li Honyuan put down the cup, moved his neck slightly, and slowly closed his eyes. And he concisely narrated. Those Bodhi beads were also sent by them. Li Honyuan opened his eyes and didn't say a word. Obviously, this matter didn't cause any emotional fluctuations in him. Pass down the words. In half a month, Shannon County will enter the provincial examination. This prince will personally oversee it. Muan write the memorial and respectfully ask Imperial Father to personally write the questions. He probably didn't expect Li Hongyuan's thoughts to jump so quickly. These were clearly two unrelated matters. However, no matter what decision Li Hongyuan made, they only needed to execute it. Currently, none of the people around Li Honyuan could participate in the matter as an aide. However, he could handle these matters by himself. Such a big matter was naturally spread out immediately. In a very short period of time, almost everyone in the prefectural city quickly spread to the surrounding counties. At the same time, people were sent to inform other prefectures, especially Shannon County's Jianchuan-Zhou Prefecture City, as the location of the provincial examination in Shannon County, and it was a special period. They had to make preparations. After the officials in the outer courtyard of the courtyard learned of this, they looked at each other and then unanimously maintained silence. It was true that when he did not move, it was fine, but when he moved, it was like a thunderbolt. Moreover, at this time, the students were already waiting impatiently. They did not know when the end would come, and even felt that the road ahead was bleak. His sudden action was undoubtedly a great reassurance. Furthermore, with the head of education being detained, there was no need to worry about the same thing happening in the provincial examination. Furthermore, he had expressed that he would personally oversee the examination, respectfully inviting the emperor to personally draft the questions, making everyone feel at ease. There were 4 counties and 28 prefectures in Jiangnan. With Shannon County taking the lead, how could the other 3 counties sit still? No matter what the original attitude towards Jin Qinhuang was, at this time, no one would make things difficult for him. They might even flatter him and hope that the matters in their own territory could be resolved as soon as possible. After all, the source of students was also a part of the political achievements. If it was not resolved, then in this area, the evaluation would be the worst, and it would not only affect the future of the students. After all, in this time's provincial examination, not every prefecture had problems. There were too many people who were worried and impatient. The students of Chongzhou Prefecture, who were the first to receive the news, regardless of whether they were preparing to participate in this year's provincial examination or not, were all very excited. Previously, they had indeed wronged Jin Qinhuang. How was this not doing anything? He clearly had a card up his sleeve and was only waiting for the right opportunity. There were many who excitedly began to pack their things, preparing to immediately head to Chuanchuanzhou Prefecture City. Half a month was not a lot of time. Here, because there was a canal that directly connected the 2 prefectures, it was fast and convenient to travel. It should be known that for people in relatively remote areas, if their family was poor and could not wait in the prefecture city and had no choice but to return home, if they received the news and rushed over at this time, if something happened, they might not be able to return in half a month. But would there be people who would complain that this time was too rushed? No. As the saying goes, a long night is fraught with dreams. After the excitement died down, they could not help but worry about the people who had participated in the provincial examination. Obviously, that examination, no matter what the result was, would definitely be invalid. And those who were originally full of confidence to participate in the provincial examination could only have their thoughts fall through. This was not a big deal. At worst, they could come back next year and take the provincial examination again. They could even catch up with the previous year's metropolitan examination, a beautiful fantasy. It should be known that until now, there was still a portion of people who had conclusive evidence that participated in the fraud and were imprisoned in the prison. If they really had ulterior motives, then that was fine. But clearly, there were many among them who were momentarily blinded by greed for various reasons. What was more innocent was that they were framed. If they were deprived of the qualification to participate in the imperial examination, perhaps the one who was ruined would not be him alone. Even a portion of people who were going to participate in the provincial examination stayed behind at this time, wanting to see the final result. In fact, Jin Qinhuang really did not let them down. On the second day, the results were completely out. The high efficiency was really rare. The people who were originally imprisoned, those who should be released were released, those who should be detained were detained, and those who should be punished were punished. And the main personnel involved were all detained. The specific results would have to wait for further trials. One thing that could be confirmed was that the officials involved had already been removed from their official hats. All the details were posted on the notice board. There was not the slightest bit of concealment. Everyone knew about it. Regarding this point, it was the result after Li Honyuan asked Jingwan. This kind of completely open mode had its own benefits. Jingwan did not hesitate to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. And Li Honyuan did not hesitate at all and completely accepted it. This kind of ability to nod his head as long as it was something beneficial. Jingwan actually sincerely admired him. This kind of person, even if it was in private matters, he could be rational when it came to matters that benefited the country and the people. He could stand high and see far. Even if he was not a wise ruler of a generation, he would not be too bad. Li Honyuan also did not know Jingwan's thoughts. If he knew, he would probably laugh. People like him would not care about what other people thought, nor would he explain anything to the world. He only had one purpose, and that was to let people know who came up with this idea. Even if it could not be widely publicized now, as long as a few people knew about it, when it was promoted in the future, it could always let her stand in front of the stage. The hearts of the people, prestige. Li Honyuan would not do things like winning the hearts of the people. He only did what he should do, but he would not hesitate to raise Jingwan's status. Even if doing this now might cause the emperor to be suspicious and think that he was using his wife's name to do something improper, he would not hesitate to do it. Those who were originally in despair in prison did not expect that not only would they be released in one piece, but their originally dead end would also be rekindled. This was because those who bought the exam questions were not permanently disqualified, but were banned from taking the exam for 3 years. 3 years was a waste of time for a small number of scholars because they had the ability to go all the way. Even if they knew the exam questions, they would not bother to buy it. Most people had studied for many years, so 3 years was just an extra 3 years for them. It did not affect them at all. Not to mention those who were unlucky and became the scapegoat. Not only did they not suffer any harm, they also received additional compensation. People like this were generally people with no background and were relatively poor. The compensation given to them was that their names would be recorded in the records. In the future, no matter where they were in the imperial examinations, their meals and lodging for a month would all be paid by the imperial court, no matter how long they took, whether it was the former or the latter. In short, these people who originally felt that they were extremely unlucky all felt joy at the turn of events, especially the latter. They even felt that they were so lucky that they cried tears of joy for a moment. We are so grateful to our wise and mighty His Majesty that we shed tears of gratitude. Yes, the official statement was that this was the emperor's intention. This was also Jingwan's masterpiece. However, it was obvious that this matter would win the hearts of the people. So, of course, it was safest to place the title on the emperor's head. Although Li Hongyuan did not really like it, he also knew that Jingwan was doing this completely for his sake. In the end, he could only nod his head. The college examination cheating case was considered to have officially come to an end in Chongzhou Prefecture. However, for this entire matter, this was only the beginning. At the same time, unbeknownst to everyone, Chongzhou Prefecture had also sent out a group of people to various counties and villages to pick up the examinees who had returned home. Jingwan's reason was very simple. After so many years of hard work, perhaps she had been waiting for this once. It was fine for the rich, as they could just wait another year if they missed it. However, for those whose entire family had tightened their belts to support a scholar, perhaps they would not be able to survive another year. Moreover, this time was so tight because of her husband. As a virtuous wife, she naturally had to help clean up the aftermath. Although her last words were teasing, Li Hongyuan enjoyed it very much. Regardless of whether it's subsidies or transportation, they can all be used within the scope of Qiyuan. It might seem like it costs a lot, but it's actually not. After all, most of the people are scholars and rich people. The specific details can be slowly considered. However, there is no rush. It can wait until later, when you rise to the top. And this provincial examination, why is it not held in autumn? The normal time is in early May. However, it is already summer. The provincial examination has 3 rounds, 9 days and 7 nights. If the weather is cooler, it will definitely be more comfortable. Li Hongyuan had always known that Jingwan had a righteous heart. Towards the weak and the poor, she had the kindness of wishing the best for everyone. As long as she was given a chance, she would definitely work hard for it. This righteousness might have something to do with her background, or perhaps it was in her nature to have such feelings. Li Hongyuan might have scoffed at such feelings if it were someone else. However, when it came to Jingwan, it made him feel that his Wanwan was indeed the most special and wonderful person in the world. When we return to the capital, look for your grandfather. He is the Minister of the Ministry of Appointments. The imperial examination is under the Ministry of Appointments. Naturally, he will be the one to worry about the relevant matters. If Wanwan has any thoughts, just give me a general idea. The rest will be left to the others to handle. They are not raised for nothing. Jingwan did not comment on Li Hongyuan's supreme thinking of working people. It is still early. Was it early? At most, it would only be 3 years. Li Hongyuan rested his head on Jingwan's thigh and slowly closed his eyes. In addition, the things that Li Hongyuan and the others had brought along were salvaged one after another. To be honest, all the people involved were shocked speechless. They carried a feeling of fear and trepidation. Every item was too precious, so much so that the people salvaging them were not only careful, they also did not dare to have the slightest bit of greedy thoughts. Because any one of these items could cost the lives of their entire family. They had already been sternly warned before. When they were being transported to Chongzhou Prefecture, the various officials' wives came to take a look under the guise of helping. After all, they had already heard that Jin Qinhuang's family property was very rich. However, they did not know if they did not see. Once they saw, they were shocked. Not to mention other things, they were all women. The first thing that came to mind was naturally Jingwan's clothes. Just one look was enough to make them completely stunned. After that, their eyes turned red and their hearts were sour. They were all women, but why was the difference so big? A set of head ornaments, perhaps it was lower than all of their jewelry. After calming down a little, apprehension emerged in their hearts. So many good things, the little that their own family gave seemed to be completely insufficient. In this way, was it really useful? It was said that Jin Qinhuang's wealth could rival a country, and was simply difficult to bribe. However, Jin Qinhuang, Fei had indeed accepted their things, and did not even refuse them. Perhaps it should still have some use? Moreover, even if Jin Qinhuang had it, it was not Jin Qinhuang Fei's private property. That's right. The eyes of the foreign lit up. After seeing the wealth of Jin Qinhuang Fu, It would definitely nurture Jin Qinhuang Fei's greedy heart. However, she certainly would not dare to easily use the things of Jin Qinhuang Fu. Moreover, Jin Qinhuang Fu had many women and many children. No matter how many things there were, it could be divided. However, if it was something that was grasped in the palm of her hand, then it would only belong to her and her children. Now a great opportunity was placed in front of her. The things that Jin Qinhuang disdained, Jin Qinhuang Fei would take a fancy to. Jin Qinhuang could not be bribed, but Jin Qinhuang Fei could. And now, Jin Qinhuang Fei had a lot of influence on Jin Qinhuang Fei, the foreign who thought that they had seen through the crux of the matter. Their thoughts turned like lightning, and they already had a plan. After that, the things that Jingwan received, in addition to some good things, also appeared a large amount of gold and silver notes. Jingwan's smiling expression on her face disappeared, but her heart became colder and colder. Only 6th or 7th rank officials, they could give out tens of thousands of taels. All kinds of gold, silver, jewelry, antiques, and paintings were also not few. Jingwan threw all these things to Li Hongyuan, packed them all up, and sent them back to the capital to Fuhuang. Looking at the current situation, the entire Jiangnan officialdom will only be more serious than expected. Moreover, it is estimated that there will not be anything clean. After all, once you enter this big dye vat, even if you want to be clean, others will have to dye you black. Those who are too clean will not be able to survive. In this way, if the investigation really turns the sky upside down, I'm afraid that there will be a complete change of blood. That way, the movement will be too big. Perhaps the entire Qi Yuan will be affected. Why don't we directly release some specious news and let them spend money to avoid disaster and deal with the most serious group of people? The rest can be slowly replaced, cleaned up, transferred far away, demoted, dismissed, or imprisoned. There will always be a way, just don't do it all at once. Wan, are you sure you want to do this? Can't you? It's not that you can't. In fact, this is similar to my original plan. However, I plan to clean up a larger area and my methods will be more ruthless. Naturally, you will have to spit out what you have eaten. Moreover, it's impossible to just spit it out and be done with it. Being an ox or a horse for the rest of your life is the lightest punishment. Your methods are gentler, and your influence will indeed be reduced to the lowest. However, in this way, Wan, your reputation, the most greedy person in Qi Yuan, perhaps there will be no one like you before and after. Li Hongyuan teased. Fu Huang will prefer this kind of situation. That's right. He doesn't like big movements, and he doesn't like such a big stain on his prosperous era. Let's go back and ask for benefits from him. Jingwan smiled and nodded. Thus, she rolled up her sleeves and prepared to work hard to become the most greedy person in history. The account books that Li Hongyuan asked people to move to the side courtyard were almost cleaned up, and the loopholes in the accounts were basically found. As for the deeper things, for example, things that only cost 50 taels but cost 500 taels, Li Hongyuan pretended not to know and did not continue to dig. As for these officials, one after another, they were released. Naturally, the more they bled, the faster they would be sent back. Those who figured this out naturally couldn't care less about the pain and sent them back. Although Jingwan asked for all of it to be sent to Chengdi, Li Hongyuan still asked people to selectively intercept some of it and did it quite naturally. At the same time, Chengdi also basically knew about Li Hongyuan's actions in Chongzhou Prefecture. His joy at his son's safety seemed to have faded by a lot. He was somewhat silent and basically did not say anything. There were some things that he was not too sure about until he received the memorials from Yu Zhongqing and Li Suyan. The former wrote in detail about Li Hongyuan's actions, while the latter talked about the mission that Li Hongyuan had sent. Finally, he smiled and was relieved. However, he also regretted that such a capable son could not become the successor. He was happy. With a wave of his hand, he drafted questions and gathered the officials to help. In order not to be a burden, they were all given food and accommodation in the palace. They could only return home after his son finished presiding over the examination. A group of capable and important officials were here to set questions for the provincial examination. He could only pinch his nose and accept it. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653584. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website, ambicken.com. Chapter 309. Time was already tight enough, yet Emperor Chung also had a whim to do something. He disliked that one set of questions was too little, so he divided the officials into several groups. Under the circumstances where they were not allowed to reveal the questions, he made a total of 3 sets of questions. Then he prepared to let his son casually choose one to use. To put it nicely, he strived for fairness and strictness. The officials silently cursed that he was purely looking for trouble. It was just a county's provincial examination. Even if it was a metropolitan examination, there had never been such a big spectacle. Was there a need to? Moreover, at this juncture, there was really no one who would be interested in this question and take the huge risk to reveal it to the people below. People who really did this were not daring because of their skills, but purely because there was a hole in their mother's head, an idiot. Therefore, some people looked at Emperor Cheng's current actions as if they were looking at an idiot, and Emperor Cheng still thought that he was wise. Because of this special period, it was understandable for Jin Qinhuang to play such a trick. But as the monarch of a country, you regarded the originally more important matters as the most important, so important that you neglected other matters and wasted too much manpower and time. The gains simply did not make up for the losses. Many old officials sighed in their hearts. Emperor Chung sent the blackguard commander to personally bring people to deliver the questions and rush to Chongzhou Prefecture in Jiangnan at the fastest speed. At the same time, he brought back the 2 gold and silver ingots. When the blackguard commander arrived at Chongzhou Prefecture and delivered the questions to Li Hongyuan, it was only 2 days before the scheduled examination time, and it was already June. Li Hongyuan had only met this commander once when he was taking the test, and then he had left him with his direct subordinate, Li Suyen. Speaking of which, as a commander, his presence was not as high as that of a commander. He even had to be respectful to his subordinates, which was enough. Fortunately, this person's mentality was relatively calm. He knew that he was only helping others to occupy a position and would sooner or later roll down. Thus, even if Emperor Chung did not assign him, the important matters of the blackguard were basically handed over to Li Suyen and became a hands-off shopkeeper. Li Suyen himself was very clear. He seriously completed the tasks that were given to him and did not overstep the boundaries of seniority. Then Li Suyen brought him up the peak to see the 2 gold and silver ingots in front of the teacher's building. He had the same expression as other people who saw that scene for the first time. Very unpredictable. Jingwan also went to take a look at the 2 ingots. She simply couldn't bear to look at them. If it was anywhere else, the sense of dissonance would not be so strong, but that place was really. Although she knew that Jin Qinhuang had a special reason, Jingwan saw the old teacher shaking his head and sighing. Jingwan really wanted to tell them that there was a special reason for this. That bastard did it on purpose. The blackguard commander might have cared a lot about those test questions, but Li Hongyuan didn't take them seriously at all. He casually tore open the seal and flipped it open to take a look. Although Jingwan had never seen the official exam questions, she had seen a lot of excerpts. Thinking about the duration of the exam, she knew that there were definitely a lot of questions. In the first round, Sutra and Moi, in Jingwan's opinion, this sutra was a bit like the fill-in-the-blanks exams in her previous life. The questions were usually excerpts from a sutra and cover up a few words. The examinee had to fill in the missing words. As for Moi, it was a question and answer about the sutra. The number of questions was so rich that it made Jingwan tremble a bit when she saw it. In the second round, There was a poem with 5 characters and 8 rhymes for sutra poems and a selection of 3 books from several important books. There was also an imperial edict, a judgment, a statement, and a warning. These were generally limited by the number of words. The minimum number of words would not be less than 200. That was written in Chinese and not in the vernacular. 200 to 300 words. If translated, it might be more than 1,000. The third round was a policy discussion, combining the theory of sutra. One would express their opinions on the current political affairs of the time. This wasn't like the palace examination, where one question could be solved. There were 5 questions. And, in Qi Yuan, the results of the third round were quite important. Of course, as time passed, it had decreased compared to the beginning of the country. Jingwan also didn't avoid it and looked. Staying in the exam room for so many days in this kind of weather is really torturous. Is Wan being generous again and preparing to use her own money to get them some ice or something? Jingwan raised her eyebrows. That's a good idea. However, perhaps she doesn't need to use her own money. Let the high officials and noble people of Sichuan Jofu contribute to support the country in selecting talents. It's only a little ice, isn't it? Li Hongyuan chuckled. In the eyes of some people, Wan is probably the number 1 black-hearted person. After this trip to Jiangnan, your reputation is probably even greater than this prince's. I'm helping Wang Ye attract hatred so that you can do things more conveniently. However, my reputation is definitely not as great as yours. No matter how many things I receive, no matter how much those people who give me things curse in their hearts, they will keep quiet on the surface. To the common people, I'm still the high and mighty Jin Wangfei. Li Hongyuan nodded with a smile in his eyes. As for the meaning, there's no need to delve into it. Then Jingwan thought of an important issue. As far as she knew, generally speaking, 2 days before the examiners would enter the imperial examination. First, a banquet would be held and all the inner and outer curtains officials would attend. After the banquet, the inner curtains officials would enter the inner curtains of the rear hall. The examiners would close the door and the inner and outer curtains officials would not interact with each other. Other than marking the exam papers, the inner curtains officials couldn't talk about other matters. However, now not to mention whether Jin Wangye was the main examiner or not, he was still very far away from the exam site. These questions should have been copied by each examinee, but now there were only 3 original questions. It should be known that in the whole of Jiangnan, there were more than 20,000 examinees every year. On average, there were more than 5,000 examinees per fu. With each person having a set of questions, the workload was definitely not small. Even if they set off now, they would only reach Sichuan Jofu tomorrow. Was it certain that the exam questions would be delivered to the examinees the day after tomorrow? Jingwan raised her doubts. Yuan, this time you seem to be very unreliable. She ridiculed. At this time, the examiners of Sichuan Jofu, one by one, were probably like ants on a hot pan, anxiously running around in circles. Li Hongyuan disagreed and was not the least bit anxious. Just adjust the order of the exam and it will be over. Just put the first round at the end. How simple. Jingwan opened her mouth and was speechless. According to what he said, indeed, the content that needed to be copied the most should be put at the end. In the first few days of the exam, there was no need to worry about not being able to produce the exam papers. As for whether it was in accordance with the rules or not, the living king of hell was born to break the rules. Or it could be said that the living king of hell was not in accordance with the rules. The commander of the blackguard breathed a sigh of relief. The things that were originally packed to become an emperor had not been sent away yet. Now, they were all given to him. Then Li Hongyuan and the others flung their sleeves and boarded the ship to leave for Sichuan Jofu. When Li Suyen came to say goodbye to this superior, he only knew about it. It could be said that he was dumbfounded. He also did not know the specific time of the exam, otherwise he probably would not be so relaxed. Now that he knew, his forehead was full of cold sweat. He inwardly blamed himself. Did he delay the time? Leaving Chongzhou Jofu this time was not like leaving Kai Mingfu with anger. Therefore, the people who should be taken away were all taken away. In the end, the people who stayed in the other courtyard were only missing the two who were strangled to death by Li Hongyuan. The rest were the same as when Jingwan and the others moved in. The Furins, whose family property had shrunk by more than half, did not have the mood to care about these things. Now, their impression of Jingwan was that, on the surface, she looked gentle and kind, but in reality, she had a Buddha's mouth and a snake's heart. She was ruthless and black-hearted, greedy by nature, a bottomless pit of dissatisfaction. Not only that, she was also jealous and did not allow any other woman to get close to Jin Qinhuang. How could such a person marry into the imperial family? Sure enough, her disguise was too good and she deceived too many people. In addition, the fact that Jin Qinhuang was henpecked was very surprising. Otherwise, why would he guard such a woman and ignore other beauties? Before Jin Qinhuang got married, wasn't he famous for being dissolute and fond of beauties? This kind of change, could it be because he suddenly cultivated his heart and character? It was absolutely impossible. As the saying goes, mountains and rivers are easy to change, but one's nature is hard to change. Therefore, it could only be that Jin Qinhuang Fei was too fierce that even Jin Qinhuang, who was known as the living king of hell, could be tidied up by her. The matter of money could not be discussed, but this aspect could be discussed. Wasn't it completely consistent with some of the rumors in Kai Ming Fu? Just as they were about to set sail on the canal, someone came to report that there were two young masters and young ladies from the aristocratic Min clan who were out on a visit and were about to return home. They learned that Jin Qinhuang was heading to Chuanzhou Fu and wondered if they could travel together to protect themselves. Li Hongyuan waved his hand indifferently, which could be considered as agreeing. After all, the Min clan could be considered to have paid a lot of Qi Yuan. Jingwan saw a flash of ridicule in Li Hongyuan's eyes. What? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653585. HTML chapter error. Click here to report exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 310. As an aristocratic family, unless it was on the decline or there was a special situation like the Pei clan, there would be more than one or two people who worked for the imperial court. The so-called aristocratic family paid attention to the status of the aristocratic family. Without power to rely on, it could not be called an aristocratic family. It would also be suppressed and quickly declined. The Pei clan had been like this for nearly 100 years, which was extremely rare. However, although it looked as glorious as before, it had actually reached a point where it was in imminent danger. If the Pei family could not find a feasible solution, it would collapse in less than 10 years. The speed of collapse would be far faster than the process of a normal family's decline. Although Li Hongyuan had trimmed the Pei family very thoroughly in his previous life, it did not mean that he did not prevent the Pei family from being uprooted. At that time, Li Hongyuan's birth mother's identity was exposed. Even if he did not like the Pei family, it was still his maternal family. If others casually added insult to injury, who knew if it would make him unhappy? Some things could be done casually, but others could not touch it. Especially when facing a temperamental person like Li Hongyuan, they had to be careful. Therefore, no matter what the Pei family did, others watched coldly from the sidelines. Not to mention the aristocratic families, it was very common for the family members of officials with a certain status to want to hitch a ride in such a situation. Under normal circumstances, it was not because they were worried about the safety of the road. Although it was safer and more convenient, it was more to show a kind of attitude. It was a kind of respect for the imperial family and recognition of its power. Therefore, Jingwan was not surprised that someone wanted to travel with them. Her husband showed such an attitude. There was definitely a problem. Jingwan sat leisurely and raised her chin slightly. She looked at Li Hongyuan with a smile. Her face was almost saying, "I'm waiting. Hurry up and say it clearly." Some people think too highly of themselves and think too highly of themselves. They always think that everything will go according to their predetermined direction. Although she did not know what happened, Jingwan almost instantly understood who he was talking about. Since the two were linked together, it was obvious. The Pei family? Li Honyuan smiled but did not say anything. The answer was obvious. It can't be the patriarch of the Pei clan. Could it be an important member of the Pei clan? The Pei family attempted to use me to revive the clan. When they found out that it was not so easy to achieve and that there was no other way, they naturally wanted to use other methods to influence or even influence your husband. Tell me, for a man like you, when threats and promises do not work, what methods do you use? Jingwan naturally thought of a certain possibility at the first moment. Her face instantly turned a little dark, and she put on a fake smile as she opened her mouth. Jin Qinhuang, this peach blossom really opens wherever you go. Li Hongyuan's eyes were tinged with a hint of a smile. So, Wan, you have to work a little harder. You're a good peach blossom, but you have to destroy the rotten ones. Seeing Li Hongyuan like this, Jingwan's unhappiness instantly dissipated. No matter how many potential rivals there were, as long as this man did not have any thoughts, there would not be any threat. In that case, she would be looking for trouble if she made a fuss here. As a qualified husband, you have to take care of your own love rivals. You also have to take care of your wife's love rivals. Understand? Although Jingwan's words were unfamiliar, Li Huayuan understood her meaning. His love rivals? Hee. Wan, are you sure you want this husband to take care of everything? This husband does not mind working hard. On the contrary, as long as you nod your head, this husband will be very willing to ensure that it will be handled cleanly. That trace of hostility and bloodthirstiness was not concealed. Jingwan's heart trembled. How could she forget this bastard's attributes? As he said, if she nodded her head, he would definitely handle it very, very cleanly. So clean that not even a speck of dust would be left. Not to mention Sun Yilin and the others. Those women who simply adored him would also not be guilty of death. As husband and wife, naturally, I can't just let my husband take care of everything. Yuan has a myriad of affairs to attend to every day. You don't have to worry about this small matter. I will take care of it fully. This is very good. This husband is very much looking forward to Wan's performance. Jingwan's little person in her heart could not stop tears from streaming down her cheeks. Grasping her own weakness, this man could eat her to death. Who could tell her where this man's weakness was, so that she could also grasp it? If this question was asked to someone else, then the answer would probably be for Jingwan to dig a hole and bury herself. Since it is a beauty prepared by the Pei clan's clan head, presumably she must be an outstanding beauty. In addition, I'm afraid that she is both talented and beautiful. He had seen Yuan's deep affection and righteousness at the water stronghold. If she is not stronger than me in every aspect, how can she push me, this Jingfei, to one side and occupy the most important position by your side and even in your heart, smoothly blowing pillow talk? Wan is in the right place at the right time. You should take the opportunity to blow pillow talk. As long as it is what you want, I will absolutely not say anything. Jin Qinhuang has the potential to be a fatuous ruler. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. At the same time, Ben Wang also has the potential to be a tyrant. Li Hongyuan answered with a smile that was not a smile. Jingwan's eyebrows jumped. It seemed to be a joke, but Jingwan felt that his words could not be any more true. This kind of temperament that was revealed from time to time was really frightening. There were many rumors about Jin Qinhuang, although Jingwan did not go to confirm anything. But now she could be sure that some of them were absolutely true, and they were even worse than the rumors. It seemed that in the future, she would have to tighten up a bit. If she could do less harm, then she would try to do less. In fact, Jingwan was very puzzled. How did his temperament form in the end? Arrogant, despotic, and condescending. This kind of situation could be explained. After all, his background was strong and he was favored. But what was this cruelty and darkness? Generally speaking, shouldn't this kind of situation be formed when he received bad treatment? Chung Di and Gue Fei Su could be considered to have nothing to say about him, except, wait, Gue Fei Su did two things that erased everything good about him. According to him, the first time was when he was 10 years old, and the second time was when he was 13. He had dodged both times. At that time, his temperament was far from mature, but he was smart enough to know the truth. Thus, he became evil? It seemed to make sense. What is Wan Wan thinking about? I want to see what kind of beauty clan head Pei has prepared. Since you want to know, then call her over to take a look. Just treat it as looking at a child. If you don't like looking at her, just throw her into the river and be done with it. Jing Wan's eyebrows jumped. Can you not take people's lives at the slightest provocation? It's fine to take a look, but there's no need for anything else. Wang Yi, do you want to take a look as well? However, since Wang Yi knows what kind of person the other party is, you must have already seen her. I haven't seen her, but I can roughly guess. Otherwise, I can look in the mirror. Perhaps I can imagine a bit. But is the other party qualified to make Ben Wang waste his energy? Maybe she's somewhat similar to you? What the hell is this? Wait, it's not impossible for two unrelated people in the world to be similar. However, in a situation where they haven't seen each other and said similar words, there can only be one possibility: blood relations. What cousins? Haha. Weren't she and Qin Zhengmin the same? Although compared to the biological cousins, they were still a bit far apart. Thinking about it, Ai Yuan's birth mother was known as the #1 beauty in Jiangnan. Ai Yuan also resembles his mother even more. To have such a talented and easy-to-control beauty, who can compare to the Pei family, especially the direct descendants? Moreover, when the women of the aristocratic families are raised, I'm afraid they have already been brainwashed to contribute everything to the family. Jing Wan said sarcastically. It's said that the Pei family's legitimate daughter doesn't want to be a concubine. Is he slapping his own mouth after breaking the rule of not being involved with the Li family's royal family? Or is it that the Pei family's clan head actually wants his granddaughter to replace me? Replace you. That old thing might have such thoughts. However, he also has to consider your grandfather's situation. So, he didn't consider that I would be an obstacle? He didn't consider whether you would agree. Wan Wan, I know that kind of person better than you. They never consider how women are. So, this cousin is even more important to meet. Even if you can't understand more, just looking at a beauty is also pleasing to the eye. Cousin? Who told you that she's a cousin? She's a niece, the eldest legitimate granddaughter of the Pei family's clan head, the great-granddaughter of that old thing, and the first child of the 4th generation of their clan head. Li Hongyuan gave Jing Wan a look that said she was still a bit naive. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653587. HTML chapter error. Click here to report no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 311. Jing Wan's face turned cold. Although in the emperor's harem, there was no lack of situations where aunts and nephews coexisted, and that place did not care about seniority. As the #1 noble family, it was disgusting for them to do such a thing. Moreover, Li Hongyuan was not the emperor yet. To put it nicely, he was the grandfather. To put it bluntly, they were not related at all. Could it be that they were not related in name, so they could be so unscrupulous? To be able to give his own great-granddaughter to his grandson as a concubine, it was simply disregarding human relations. How could ordinary people be so shameless? Although the current noble families were not as good as the previous era, when they could share the country with the emperor, they still cared about family status and face. They were also reserved and proud. For example, the current Jiang and Xie families were like this. Although they did not still adhere to the concept of marriage only with noble families of the same level, but among the 4 dukes and 9 marquises who founded the country, if any of them were born bumpkins, even if they were dukes or marquises, if they wanted to marry a concubine's daughter, they would be opposed by many clansmen. Even if there was no one in the branch for 3 generations, even if there was a problem with the girl herself, it was still not allowed. This was the concept of family status among the top noble families. In fact, in their bones, they didn't even take the Li royal family seriously. It was only because the other party was the emperor that they relaxed a little when it came to the marriage of a daughter. Even so, they couldn't do something like the marriage of an aunt and a niece. If the emperor wanted to rob them, he had to think twice. But looking at the daughters-in-law of the royal family, there were very few noble daughters. This was the true reflection of this point. The daughter of the main family, becoming a concubine? Messing up human relations? Sending herself to the door? Haha, if the other rich clans knew about this, they would probably completely reject the Pei clan's connections. Did the head of the Pei family know what he was doing? Or was it that he was certain that Li Hongyuan would rise to power? Was he certain that the Pei family would be the biggest winner in the end? As long as he won, he could ignore all mistakes. As long as he held power, not only would people not criticize him, but they would also curry favor with him. This kind of person was completely unscrupulous in order to achieve his goals. Jingwan was 100% sure that even if he didn't have any plans to remove her from the position of Li Hongyuan's official wife, he would definitely find a way to remove her in the future. Most likely, he wouldn't wait until after Li Hongyuan ascended the throne. It would be in the best interest of the Pei family to become the empress of Li Hongyuan. Only then could the Pei family restore the reputation of the Pei family. As for what method he would use, it was nothing more than to ruin her reputation, and then do his best to raise the reputation of the Pei family's daughter. Jingwan sneered. No matter how good one's wishful thinking was, it still depended on whether the other party was willing or not. She was bound to make him fall before he could even take the first step. The most confident and calm part was probably the first step. Li Hongyuan saw the gloomy expression on Jingwan's face and smiled. The emperor's heart was comforted. This wife finally had some self-awareness. Was it easy for him to reach this step? In the Pei family's main family, is there not a single girl of marriageable age who is of the same generation as you? Or is there no daughter of the first wife? Otherwise, why would they arrange a marriage between the younger generation? It had always been the cousins that were the talk of the town. He had never heard of an uncle or a niece becoming a good couple. The current head of the Pei family has 2 wives who are sisters of the first wife. They have a very close relationship and gave birth to 5 sons and 3 daughters of the first wife. In terms of the relationship between mother and daughter, it's as if they were born from the same mother. The imperial noble consort is the youngest of the 6. Of the 5 sons of the first wife, the eldest son of the first wife remarried twice, the 3rd and 4th son of the first wife remarried once, and the number of children born of the first wife exceeded 20. There are also 3 unmarried girls. One of them is a pair of twin sisters who are 15 years old, and the other is even younger. As for those born of concubines, there are more than a dozen of them in the previous generation who have grown up. Carefully counting the people of the same generation as me, the ones born of the first wife, the ones born of concubines, 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 and the ones born of concubines. The total is about 156. Jingwan's mouth couldn't help but twitch. The men of the Pei family's main family were really studs, and those wives and concubines also seemed to be able to give birth. Are there so many surviving children in aristocratic families? Didn't they say that the harem of an aristocratic family was like the harem of an emperor? If one could have more than 10 sons, they would be considered outstanding even in the emperor. This Pei family's main family, just based on the number of children they had, one would think that they were a harmonious family. That old thing had a total of 5 brothers, and only one could compete with him for the position of the family head. When he took the position, he only had a younger brother who was 20 years younger than him, and he was born a little mentally retarded. Li Hongyuan purposely emphasized the word born. After he took power, the families of his brothers were separated. At that time, grandchildren were already born, and every family that was separated, old and young, did not have more than 2 people. Jingwan sucked in a breath of cold air. Comparing the two, the difference was too big. Wasn't he afraid of being criticized? How could that be? Li Hongyuan chuckled, laughing at Jingwan for thinking too simply. Everyone said that he was good at managing his family, and he took good care of his brothers and their families. When his father was alive, he often told others that this child was very kind. Such a big family, lively and harmonious, and there had never been any bad news from his harem. How could outsiders criticize him? They would only envy him and praise him. Wan he valued his children very much. She didn't participate much in the internal strife, but she knew quite a lot. Valuing his children meant that the internal strife could not hurt his children. Only those with his blood were his family, and other women, regardless of whether they were his wives or concubines, were just tools for reproduction. Between his family and his tools, it was obvious who he would choose. If he really used blood to set the rules from the beginning, then it was not strange that the Pei family's main family was so flourishing. However, were the so-called family members really family members? Now it seemed that they were just pawns, and the degree of importance they were attached to was related to their role. Since he did it so carefully, he must cherish his reputation. When he gave you someone, it sounded better to give a granddaughter than a great-granddaughter. The reason why that old thing chose a great-granddaughter and not a granddaughter is probably the so-called sincerity. No matter which generation, the eldest son, regardless of whether it is a son or a daughter, will be greatly valued, especially in aristocratic families. Although there are granddaughters who are of marriageable age, although they are both daughters of the first wife, they are the second generation. Whether it is in terms of birth or beauty, they are a far cry from this one. Moreover, the world doesn't know about my relationship with the Pei family. By the time they know, the dust may have already settled. That's probably what that old thing thinks. Jingwan sneered. If the quality is not enough, then the quantity is enough. The twin sister's cousins are probably not worse than the first cousin's niece. He really thought that she was a soft persimmon. If she didn't properly return the favor, she would not be able to live up to her current reputation. What does Wan want to do? Li Hongyuan asked with a smile. Yuan, you don't understand. Yes, I don't understand. Li Hongyuan said calmly. If you don't understand, then do your own thing. You don't need to understand. Didn't I say that I will handle these matters? Men, princess consort. Send an invitation to the Min family ship. This princess consort wants to have a chat with the 2 ladies. The subordinates pass the message. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653589. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 312. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan, who was nodding his head seriously and really didn't know what to say to him. It was the Min clan's ship. Since they didn't explicitly say that there were other people on board, even if they were interested in other people, you can't abandon the master and not care about them. Since they had already specified that there were 2 people, then you should understand who they really wanted to meet. Knowing this, why did you deliberately misinterpret it again? Although Minshur was a close in-law of Peishur, they didn't offend you. Was there a need to vent your anger on them? Yuan, you don't need to intervene. If you're really bored, go take a swim in the water. Wan's suggestion is good. If I'm really bored to that extent, this husband will definitely give it a try. So, when this man wanted to go along with you, he could say anything and you couldn't do anything to him. The best way was to ignore him. Jingwan flicked her sleeves and left to see the beauty. Maybe she could find a bit of the Imperial Gui Fei's elegance from this beauty. Behind her, on Minshir's ship, when they received Jingwan's invitation, they were also very surprised. Especially when the invitation clearly said 2 ladies. Did the other party mistakenly make them sisters, or the other party already knew that there was another lady on board? It should be me, and Yuan Ba. Speaking of which, I'm one more person on board. It's also our fault that we didn't make it clear. Since we've already invited them, we should apologize even more. The veiled woman said softly, her eyes shining brightly and carrying a faint smile. Speaking of which, I also want to see Jin Qinhuang Fei. After all, they were bound to become enemies in the future. Although this wasn't what she wanted, but she had no other choice. Whether it was for her clan or for herself, she had to fight. Meeting now, although it was unexpected, but it wasn't impossible. Under the circumstances where the other party was still unaware, it was easier to find out the truth. Obviously, this girl didn't think that Jingwan wanted to see her, because she already knew of their Peishur's plan. After a careful grooming, even though this Miss Peishur did not dress up, but the details were done to the extreme. Not only was it for Jin Qinhuang Fei, she might even meet Jin Qinhuang. This first impression was of utmost importance. It could not be too excessive, but it absolutely could not have any flaws. However, the young ladies of the Min family did not know her purpose, and only praised her for her beauty. They had never seen a more beautiful young lady than her. Miss Pei only smiled and didn't say anything else. After that, the 2 of them each brought 2 maidservants and a nanny and boarded Jingwan's ship. There were already servants waiting by the side, leading them to the cabin on the 3rd floor. Because of her ulterior motives, Miss Peishur naturally saw more and more carefully. Surprise flashed through her heart. How to say it? As mentioned before, aristocratic families had their pride and heritage. Even if they already knew where their marriage would end up, but in their bones, they still looked down on the imperial family. Looking down on their taste, looking down on their heritage, looking down on their rules. Even though they didn't realize this point because they deliberately ignored it, but it was revealed in their every word and action. However, because of this, when they saw that everything around them was beyond their expectations, they felt surprised. Going up to the 3rd floor, not to mention other things, when they saw the carpet on the floor, it was somewhat difficult to walk. Of course, as a young lady of an aristocratic family, they didn't do such a petty action. No matter what they thought in their hearts, they maintained a calm appearance. This was something that had integrated into their bones and blood and would not be easily affected. Gong Mama was waiting outside the guest room. When she saw the 2 young ladies, she greeted them in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. The 2 instinctively returned the greeting. In that instant, they thought of her as a capable nanny by the side of an elder in their family. She was an existence that they had to show some respect to. When she realized what she had done, although Miss Min was a bit surprised, she didn't care too much. After all, she was a nanny by the side of an imperial concubine. This bit of respect was only natural. Miss Pei sure didn't think so in her heart. Along the way, she had seen more than 1 or 2 unexpected things. Therefore, what she originally thought would not be achieved so easily. Gong Mama glanced at Miss Pei. Because she was from the same family as the imperial noble consort, and because she had evil intentions, she couldn't help but pay more attention to her. Naturally, she compared her to the imperial noble consort. Although her face was covered, because it was a thin veil, it didn't have much of an effect. However, Gong Mama paid more attention to a person's temperament and bearing. It was said that this was the most beautiful young lady of the Pei family. In Jiangnan, because she always covered her face when she went out, the title of the most beautiful young lady didn't spread. However, Her talent was quite famous. When other people saw Miss Pei for the first time, at least 9 out of 10 people would praise her. Even those who were jealous couldn't deny her. But Gong Mama didn't think so. With the imperial noble consort in front of her, the imperial noble consort also had a first-class temperament. This young lady was far inferior. Of course, this might be the result of Gong Mama's selfishness, but it was a fact that she couldn't compare. Don't blame Gong Mama for showing off her power at the door. Don't forget who she learned the rules from. The things of aristocratic families were really not difficult for her, although she didn't know it when she learned it. In addition, she wasn't an ordinary woman of the inner residence. She hadn't shown her power yet. Otherwise, few of these young ladies could stand still. After entering the door, they greeted her in a well-behaved manner, but obviously there wasn't much respect. Jingwan smiled noncommittally. She waved her hand casually and excused the formalities. Sit down. Jingwan didn't avoid looking at them. Their eyes fell on Jingwan. Although they weren't so direct, they didn't hide it. Digression. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/6653593. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.beacon.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 313. Before Jingwan could say anything, Mama Gong spoke first. There are no men here, so why is Miss Pei wearing a veil? Are you looking down on our princess consort and feel that princess consort doesn't like your honor? Or are you afraid of frightening our princess consort if you're ugly? If it's the latter, then it's fine. But if it's the former, is this the upbringing and etiquette of a noble family's young lady? These words were not polite at all. Jingwan was a bit speechless. Her mama's temper seemed to be a bit big. But she didn't say anything wrong. Of course, her own people couldn't undermine her. It was impossible for the other side's people to remain indifferent, especially the people who served Miss Pei. Their eyes were almost spitting fire. In the end, they remembered their status and didn't immediately talk back. Something carved into their bones didn't allow them to do anything rude. This was their pride as servants of noble families. That's right, they were all servants. They looked down on people of the same status outside of noble families. In Jiangnan, they had always looked down their noses at the servants in the official's residence. So what if she was a Qin Wang Fei? How could the people around her follow rules and etiquette? Their faces didn't show it, but their eyes showed disdain and disapproval. Were the maids by Jingwan's side that bad? Of course not. It was just that compared to these people who had learned rules from a young age and integrated all kinds of rules into their daily habits, rules and etiquette to them were not rules and etiquette. They were just ordinary meals. Naturally, they were lacking. But Jingwan didn't care at all. They were carved from the same mold. What was there to care about? Even if the people around her could be trained like this, she didn't want them. Princess Consort, please allow me to report. Our miss is not looking down on Princess Consort. It's just that when she goes out, it's all like this. It's a habit. At this point, Miss Pei suppressed the anger in her heart. She raised a hand to stop her mama from continuing. She took off her veil and revealed a country-toppling beauty. I hope Princess Consort doesn't take offense. It's really a habit. We don't mean to disrespect Princess Consort. Jingwan smiled. It's fine. She had the servants bring in tea and refreshments. He thought to himself, sure enough, she's beautiful beyond compare. In Jingwan's view, the so-called beauty could hardly be the best. She had to admit that this woman was the most beautiful among all the women she had ever seen. She glanced at Nanny Gong casually and found that Nanny Gong was not moved at all. She wondered whether Nanny Gong was expressionless or not, or Nanny Pei was still not as beautiful as the imperial noble consort in those days. Compared with the two girls, Jingwan's clothes were actually more casual. She only wore a few hairpins on her head and a string of Buddha beads around her wrist. At first glance, she looked a little shabby, but in fact, she was not. Anyone with a little eyesight could see that all her clothes were good. What showed was a low-key and elegant luxury. This casualness and calmness made the Pei clan's daughter, who was meticulous to every detail, feel that she was at a disadvantage. Jingwan didn't deliberately say anything to them. She just chatted with them. Perhaps Jingwan was not as beautiful or talented as Miss Pei, but she could deal with this kind of situation easily. In fact, she was almost 1 year younger than Miss Pei. However, she had more experience and knowledge than Miss Pei. Not to mention the things in her previous life. In this life, she loved travel books and miscellaneous studies. She also dabbled in history books. She had read a lot of books in the past few years. After marrying Li Hongyuan, she talked about the current situation of the world almost every day. Her knowledge was constantly increasing. Even if Miss Pei was very knowledgeable and quoted classics, as long as it was special, she could grasp 70% or 80% of it. To be honest, she was not afraid. Miss Pei also wanted to test Jingwan's depth. After all, she was a great enemy. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy. Only then could she better plan her future path. Therefore, Miss Pei, who usually seemed gentle and kind, but was actually arrogant and always kept a certain distance from others, changed her usual self and became much more friendly. Miss Min, who was beside her, kept glancing at her. However, because she was a girl with a big heart, she didn't mind being left out. As for the fact that she couldn't get a word in, she didn't care too much about it. In any case, there were so many talented girls around her. She couldn't flatter them and had already gotten over it. As time passed, Jingwan could only sigh. Miss Pei was indeed a girl carefully groomed by a top aristocratic family. Even if she grew up in a boudoir, she still had extraordinary knowledge. But why would such a young lady want to be a concubine for no reason? Did she really have the supreme consciousness of, since my family gave me a life of hardship, I will give everything to my family? Or did she have great ambition and came to be the mother of the world? Or was it a combination of both? Compared to Jingwan, the fluctuations in Miss Pei's heart were much more intense. Before, she was confident that even if she was a concubine for a while, she wouldn't be a concubine for life. What she relied on was not only her beauty and talent, but also her insight and wisdom. She deeply believed that she could not only be a virtuous wife and stabilize his inner residence, she could also become his strategist and assist him in obtaining the throne. This was an advantage that other women didn't have. She didn't know much about Jin Qinhuang. Basically, it all came from her great-grandfather. But on this point, she firmly believed that a man like Jin Qinhuang, because he held the pearl of wisdom, would not be afraid of a woman's talent. On the contrary, in her opinion, the more intelligent she was, the more she would gain his favor. Even if her guess was wrong, she could adjust in time. But after a conversation with Jin Qinhuang Fei, her self-confidence suddenly decreased. She disdained to use her beauty to suppress Jin Qinhuang Fei, but the advantage she thought she had, in fact, the other party was better than her. Even if she didn't want to admit it, this was an indisputable fact. This wasn't the most serious thing. She found out from her great-grandfather that Jin Qinhuang Fei was younger than her and hadn't been in the position of Jin Qinhuang Fei for long. Although she also came from a scholarly family, it was far worse than an aristocratic family. In her estimation, the other party wasn't as good as her in any aspect, but the fact was that it wasn't so. Not to mention the bearing and self-restraint that had been cultivated for many years from being in a high position, as well as the knowledge and wisdom that far surpassed her peers. It made her feel for no reason that she was facing an elder with penetrating insight. It wasn't that she was deliberately testing her, but she was receiving the other party's guidance. This feeling was really terrible. Miss Pei received a blow that wasn't light, and for a time, she had doubts about herself. She doubted whether it was right for her to continue on like this. Could she really be like what her great-grandfather said? To stand at the highest position and become the support of the clan? However, this mentality didn't last long. Even though she received a blow, But this meeting in advance still had more advantages than disadvantages. At least it let her sober up a bit and let her know that her opponent wasn't easy to deal with. Her previous disregard and even contempt was because she thought too highly of herself. Her face was gentle, but her bones were cold. She indeed looked down on a lot of people, but it wasn't that she didn't know her own limits. She couldn't use the area that she thought she had the most advantage in the beginning, but she had another weapon, beauty. How many men in the world could not be seduced by beauty, and Jin Qinhuang himself was the leader in this aspect. No matter what method she used, as long as she won him over, there would naturally be a way to make him not turn back. What Jin Qinhuang Fei had, she also had. What Jin Qinhuang Fei didn't have, she also had. No matter how she looked at it, her chances of winning were greater. Jingwan probably didn't think that in this extremely short period of time, this cousin's niece's thoughts had turned so many twists and turns. If she knew, she would probably say, "Miss Pei, where did this come from? You're thinking too much." If Pei really wanted to borrow Jin Qinhuang to rise, the best and simplest way was to take out all of Pei's power and help him to the greatest extent. Honestly, don't make any messy moths. No matter how big this ambition was, don't show it. After the matter was done, no matter how bad it was, at least 30%. Even if it didn't reach the expected height, based on the special relationship between Pei and Jin Qinhuang, based on Pei's large number of talents and deep background, it was only a matter of time before they once again became a genuine aristocratic family. The clan head of Pei thought too much, calculated too much, had too much ambition, and thought too highly of himself. Little did he know that the power of Pei, in Li Hongyuan's eyes, was actually worse than chicken ribs. Moreover, he was the kind of person who had a strong desire for control. If you wanted to control him instead, then you could only he. Jingwan wanted to see the beauty, and this goal was achieved. As for whether she liked or disliked this Miss Pei, because she didn't know the specific thoughts of the other party, she couldn't talk about it for the time being. If it was because she had no choice, or was forced by the clan, or shouldered the clan's honor and disgrace, she could still be forgiven. If, seeing that it was almost time, Jingwan didn't keep them any longer. But when she left, she gave each of them a gift, which was considered a meeting gift. Then she let Gong Mama personally send them out. It was just that on the corridor outside, she unexpectedly met Li Hongyuan, who came to find Jingwan. Even if she hadn't seen Li Hongyuan before, she should have guessed who he was at this time. She hurriedly stopped to greet him. Li Hongyuan turned a blind eye and was about to walk past them, when Miss Pei suddenly stopped in her tracks. "Raise your head." Usually this was actually very rude, but the other party's status was noble, so there was no way for her to refuse. Moreover, wasn't this the situation that Miss Pei wanted? After all, he was her future husband. No matter what, Miss Pei was inexplicably nervous. Her palms were faintly sweaty, and a faint blush crept up her face unconsciously. She raised her head discreetly, but her gaze was downwards. She didn't look directly at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan sized her up for a moment. When he saw Miss Pei's posture, he curled his lips mockingly and left in a huff. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653595. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 314. Miss Pei was still in a daze when Miss Min, beside her, pulled her. "Ma inging jie?" Miss Pei returned to her senses. "Nothing, let's go." Gong Mama glanced at her and sneered in her heart. "Wang Ye only looked at you once. What else could there be? Did you really think that Wang Ye was a lecherous person, and that just because he noticed you, he took a fancy to you?" The girls taught by Pei were becoming more and more unsightly. compared to the imperial Gui Fei of the past, the difference was more than just appearance. However, Pei definitely had ideas about Wang Ye for more than a day or two. This girl must have been specially trained to achieve certain goals. Thus, she could easily accept the fact that she would be married to uncle as a concubine. Aristocratic family? Wealthy family? It was the biggest joke in the world. Gong Mama didn't go down to the third floor. She just crouched down at the top of the stairs and didn't wait for the other party to show any sign of shrinking back before she turned back. Miss Min opened her mouth as if she didn't know what to say. After a pause, she finally whispered in dissatisfaction, "This is too rude." And Jin Qinhuang, Yuan, be careful with your words." Pei Ma Yingying gently interrupted Miss Min. "Let's go." She reached out and took the other's wrist. Li Honyuan went to find Jingwan. Jingwan was still sitting in the same place, holding her chin and lost in thought. Li Honyuan waved his hand in front of her. "Wanwan, why are you so serious?" Jingwan looked up at him and hooked up a shallow smile. "I'm reminiscing about the beauty. Since a Yuan came over now, he must have seen someone." Li Honyuan nodded. "There's no need to reminisce. If Wanwan likes it, I'll let people peel off that beauty skin and let you hang it in front of me. You can look at it every day." Jingwan choked. Did he have to be so cruel? This human skin is just a thin layer. How long can it be preserved if it's animal skin? It's better to leave it on a person. At least it's fresh. Fresh? Li Honyuan seemed to be chewing. Wanwan is right. I'll let people study it. It won't be too late to peel it off when it can be kept fresh. Could they not talk about this? Li Honyuan also knew when to stop and didn't mention it. As for the two Gunyang who had obtained Pei Shi and Min Shi, they returned to Min Shi's ship. As Min Shi's elder brother, who had admired Pei Yuing for a long time, how could they sit quietly when they boarded the ship of Jin Qinhuang, who had a reputation for being dissolute and lecherous? Knowing that the two had returned, they naturally rushed over in a hurry. Seeing that there was nothing wrong with the two, they suppressed their impatience and revealed a warm smile. They pretended to be unintentional, but in reality, they were trying to find out why Jin Qinhuang Fei wanted to see them. He was afraid that something unexpected would happen. Pei Xiuying directly said that she was a little tired and went back to her room. Young Master Min naturally nodded his head and agreed. He watched them leave gracefully and then pulled his sister to ask all kinds of questions. Jin Qinhuang Fei, or whatever, he had no interest at all. He only paid attention to how Jin Qinhuang was doing. And what about Jin Qinhuang? It was just the last time they met, and the other party only said one sentence. But when he heard the sentence, young Master Min directly exploded and lost his reason. He wanted to rush onto the largest official ship and fight Li Honyuan. Min Shi was too lazy to pay attention to him. In any case, every time someone tried to matchmake Ma Yingying Jejie, he would go crazy. The wooden planks between the two ships had already been removed. If you have the ability, go up. Although Min Shi was a broad-minded person, it didn't mean that she was stupid. As a bystander, she might be able to see more clearly than Pei Xiuying, who was involved. She was at least 70% sure that Jin Qinhuang Fei wanted to see Ma Yingying Jejie, and she was only there in passing. Ma Yingying Jejie's attitude was also very strange. There must be something that she didn't know. However, no matter what the secret was, she wasn't interested in exploring it. She just looked at her elder brother with pity. Ma Yingying Jejie wasn't someone that you could covet. Save it. Every time you go crazy behind her back, not to mention that Pei Shi and Ma Yingying Jejie didn't know. Even if they knew, they wouldn't pay attention to you. With no way to find them, young Master Min randomly cursed Li Honyuan on his own ship. He called out his surname and scolded Li Honyuan as unbearable as he could. Fortunately, everyone on the ship was on his own side. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. After that, the journey was smooth and there weren't any problems. When they arrived at Sichuan Zhoufu, there were also many officials lining the streets to welcome them. This time, all the important officials in Shannon County, except for the Admiral Xu Ezhing, who was detained, were all present. Li Hongyuan's gaze swept over them one by one, but didn't say much. Tomorrow was the provincial examination, and Li Hongyuan didn't deliberately delay the time. Perhaps it was a habit formed in the two places, but this time they also prepared a side courtyard. As the main examiner, Li Hongyuan, the boss, wasn't present. So naturally, there wasn't a banquet. Without paying attention to the others, he directly called the deputy examiner and threw out 3 sets of questions, letting him choose one by himself. The third round would be brought up to the first round and quickly prepare the exam questions needed tomorrow. Although this was against the rules, but at this time, no one would foolishly go up and talk to Jin Qinhuang about the rules. Speaking of which, this deputy examiner was relieved. If they really followed the conventional order, even if it was printed and not copied, they wouldn't be able to produce the exam questions tomorrow. At that time, could they still say that it was Jin Qinhuang's fault? Naturally, they couldn't. The deputy examiner also didn't dare to be negligent. At this time, he also didn't refuse. He casually took one of the 3 sets, and then asked Jin Qinhuang to send a few guards. Li Hongyuan let Li Suyin transfer a few people to escort him back to the examination courtyard. The original examiners were all waiting there. When they learned of Jin Qinhuang's decision, they all breathed a sigh of relief. However, even so, they still had to quickly prepare the exam questions for the third round. Because of the urgency of time, they couldn't care too much about the rules and work together. The provincial examination was important. Li Hongyuan didn't see the other officials. It was simply open and above board. In fact, even if there wasn't this matter, Li Hongyuan said that he didn't see them. It was also justified. Jingwan was a bit puzzled. Since printing was already available, why did the exam questions still need to be copied? In order to be completely unified, wasn't printing better? A scholar should have the appearance of a scholar. How could the exam questions be printed? Li Hongyuan lightly opened his mouth. This is the reason for making this rule. Li Hongyuan gave an affirmative answer. Jingwan was also speechless. Just like in her previous life, there were a large number of students and a large number of exam questions. If they were to be manually copied, just thinking about it made her shiver. The teachers would definitely go on strike in groups. The next day, the doors of the examination courtyard opened wide. The examinees entered and were strictly searched one by one. Moreover, there were black-robed guards with knives to suppress the scene. Before they even entered, their legs were already weak. Especially those who had something wrong with them, even if it was just a little bit, they were all found out. It seemed that because of the problems in the previous examination, the provincial examination this time was especially strict. After entering, time was up. The doors of the examination courtyard closed and the rules were explained. Then, the examination questions were directly given. It could be said that it wasn't clean and efficient. However, when the examinees received the examination questions, there was a commotion one after another. Was there a mistake with the questions? The sound of gongs and drums rang. For a moment, the examinees quieted down and waited for an explanation. It wasn't that the questions were wrong. It was really the third round's questions that had been brought up to the first round. It was called a test of everyone's ability to adapt to the situation and lay a foundation for future officials. After all, at that time, anything could happen. Those who were still clear-headed knew that this was nonsense. They also quickly understood the reason behind it. It actually didn't have much of an impact on these people. If you like to hear the official nonsense, then listen to a few sentences. If you didn't like to hear it, then just go in one ear and out the other. For the examinees, did the adjustment of the examination room's order have any impact? Of course not. The impact was actually very big. It was an examination that concerned their entire life. Most people were nervous. The imperial examinations rounds were actually progressing from easy to difficult. Some people were more confident in the beginning. When faced with a difficult question, they would naturally be more nervous. Moreover, if they didn't answer well, the later rounds would inevitably be affected. The result could be imagined. Look, it was just the beginning. Some people's hands and feet were already trembling and sweating. They couldn't sit still, and their hands couldn't hold the pen. They could barely hold it. Large drops of ink dripped onto the paper. Fortunately, it was only draft paper. If not, in just 2 hours, there were actually people who fainted. Without a doubt, this examination was completely over. One had to know that according to the normal order, those who did well in the earlier rounds might not do so well in the later rounds, but they still had a chance. Obviously, the adjustment of the rounds had a more serious impact than expected. Facing the other examiners' gazes, Li Honyuan sneered. Although your previous words were dignified, they weren't without reason. If you can't even handle such a small matter, how can you handle the world's affairs? This kind of person, even if he is talented, is not suitable to be an official. It's better to remove him as soon as possible. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/66535597. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 315. With that said, the others naturally didn't dare to say more. They just loved to surf the internet. It had to be known that these people might not have been involved in the previous court examination cheating case or participated in the SALT policy. But that didn't mean that they weren't involved in corruption. A knife called living hell was still hanging over their heads. They had heard of the wretchedness of the many officials in Chongzhou, but even if they gave away all their wealth, it didn't mean that the matter was over. The other examiners had to keep watch. Li Honyuan was an exception. He could leave or stay as he pleased, but no one said a word. Regardless of whether it was because of fear or something else, when he wasn't there, they were much more relaxed. Thus, perhaps they wished that he didn't come. Li Honyuan didn't just wash his hands of the matter. No matter if it was morning or afternoon, he would take some time to come and sit. 3 days and 2 nights later, it was time for the first exam. Other than the fact that more people were taken out in the middle of the exam than in previous years, there didn't seem to be any difference. All the answer sheets were collected and sealed. Because the inner curtain official was still busy copying the questions that should have been in the first exam, but had been placed in the third exam, marking the papers was temporarily put aside. Li Honyuan hugged his wife to sleep every night. Everything that happened outside seemed to have nothing to do with him. Compared to his leisure, Jingwan could be said to be busy. Ever since the start of the provincial examination, there had been a succession of officials' wives coming to visit. It had to be known that the prefectural city and county city were the same, but Chongzhou couldn't compare to them. In a normal prefectural city, the prefectural leader was the boss, at most a fourth-rank official. In a county city, the prefectural leader could only stand to the side. Perhaps she had once thought of being picky and accepting, but now it was different. Regardless of whether the gift was light or heavy, Jingwan accepted it all. She would warm up to those that caught her eye, and she couldn't be bothered with those that didn't catch her eye. After all, her attitude had been made clear. These things were completely insufficient. The exact situation in Chongzhou wasn't known, but she could probably empathize with those people. The greed of Jin Wangfei was like a bottomless pit that couldn't be filled. But even so, what could she do? Not give it? In 2 days, after Jin Qinhuang finished his provincial examination, he would invite the officials to drink tea. It was possible that he would not be able to return. In this way, no matter how painful or ruthless her heart was, she could only grit her teeth and endure. Not only that, when she faced Jin Qinhuang again, she still had to wear a smiling face, hold her up, flatter her, and only hope to coax her to be happy so that she could blow wind in Jin Qinhuang's ear. Of course, everyone knew that if the matter was too big, it would be useless to rely solely on Bianfeng. However, according to the situation of Chongzhou Prefecture, as long as the treasury was more or less tidied up, it would not be difficult to fool Prince Jin with the items on the account. Of course, as long as Jin Qinhuang did not leave Jiangnan, the suspended hearts of the people would not be able to fall to the ground. It wasn't until the afternoon of the second exam that an unexpected visitor came. Perhaps the visitor knew Li Hongyuan's schedule for the past few days. When the visitor came, Li Hongyuan had just woken up from his afternoon nap. When Li Hongyuan saw the post, he didn't comment on it. He tossed the post aside and let them in. Jingwan picked up the post and saw the name at the end. Min Yuhan? This is a member of the Min clan? What did this person come here for? The former fiancé of the Imperial Gui Fei. Li Hongyuan did not hide anything, to make that person on the throne suspect and even kill the culprit. His tone was undisciplined. It should have been a shocking matter, but from his mouth it was categorized as today's weather is good. At least Jingwan's heart jumped. Yuan has seen him? Did he come here on his own? This person hates the historical imperial family, especially that person on the throne, to the bone. Last year's incident at the western border was caused by him. He was discovered in time and captured, so it did not lead to more serious consequences. The person was brought to Chengde's summer palace. At that time, his identity was known. Jingwan wanted to say, "You have people at the border. Your hands are stretched too far." However, this was not the main point. Because of the Imperial Gui Fei, you let him go? He volunteered to be a spy for this prince and work in Jiangnan. Jingwan's expression was a little difficult to say. After a moment, she said, "Because of the deep roots of love, he originally hated her. After seeing you, he changed his attitude. Just because you are the only bloodline of the person he loves, even if half of the blood of his enemy is in you, he still loves you more than he hates you? Some things should be known to him." Li Hongyuan was a little meaningful. Jingwan understood tacitly. If nothing happened in the middle, how could there be such a big change in his attitude? Also, according to this man's temperament, if he did not do anything and just let her go, it would not be in line with his character. Jingwan could even imagine that Min Yuhan was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He probably did not die immediately because he wanted to send his beloved child to the throne. Then, he would have a little face to see his beloved. Jingwan did not comment on this kind of person. She could only say that a pitiful person must have a hateful side. Li Hongyuan went to see Min Yuhan. Compared to last year, he did not look as dispirited, especially on the outside. After meticulous grooming, he seemed to have finally found his way forward and had the motivation to continue living. After nearly a year of recuperation, he had put on some weight and was able to support his clothes. His bearing that belonged to an aristocratic family was evident. Even though he was already middle-aged, he did not lose his handsomeness. It was just that he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. If one were to describe this vicissitudes of life, it would be wisdom. This kind of person could easily not express his emotions because his heart was already dead. However, when needed, he could also be a top-notch actor. "Greetings, Your Highness." Min Yuhan greeted Li Hongyuan calmly. However, his gaze was always downcast, and he did not look at Li Hongyuan. It was obvious that his heart was not so calm. Li Hongyuan sat on the main seat casually. "What do you want from me?" He was not polite at all. This matter is very important. It involves not only the short-sighted officialdom, but also the struggle between the aristocratic families. Although I know that Your Highness is talented and wise, you are not particularly familiar with Jiangnan. It is inevitable that you will be negligent. There are also some people who are sinister. This commoner is bold and wants to make a decision on my own. I want to do something for Your Highness. However, I do not know what Your Highness is planning and dare not act rashly to avoid alerting the enemy. I just sorted out the relationship between the aristocratic families and the officialdom, hoping that it will be of some use to Your Highness." As he finished speaking, Min Yuhan presented a small booklet. Li Hongyuan did not refuse. He let Mu Un take the booklet and casually flipped through it. After reading 2 or 3 pages, Li Hongyuan's face was slightly solemn. He flipped through the booklet until it was finished and pressed it beside his hand. It is somewhat useful. Although Li Hongyuan had planted people in Jiangnan, there were limitations and it was not convenient for him to make a move. For example, within the aristocratic families, the closer the person was to the core, the harder it was to arrange a spy. The people around those people were generally from a young age and were very loyal. Whether it was bribing or replacing them, it was very difficult. Min Yuhan was different. He was the direct descendant of the main family of the Min family and was originally highly valued. However, he was marginalized by the family because of an accident. Now that he had returned to the family, even if the family was still indifferent, they could not deny his talent. There were some things that he did not need to take the initiative to do, but people would take the initiative to come to him. He would occasionally say a few words and hit the nail on the head. Naturally, the family would rely on him more and more. If he wanted to know something, it would not attract attention if it did not affect the family's interests. This might not be a big deal within the aristocratic families, but it was very difficult for outsiders to find out. When Min Yuhan heard this, he was slightly relieved. It would be great if it could be useful to Prince Pei. To be honest, when Li Hongyuan met with an accident, he was as worried and anxious as anyone else. However, he quickly realized that things might not be as he had expected. Because of those traces, he calmed down and carefully probed. With some deductions, he had already guessed most of the situation. Even though he knew that Li Hongyuan was not really in danger, Min Yuhan's mood did not improve at all. Instead, his life experience became even more gloomy. All these years, he had been muddle-headed and didn't think too much about it. After he woke up, he carefully sorted out the things that happened back then and felt that something was wrong. Some things weren't as simple as they seemed on the surface. In the past year, while he was secretly helping Li Hongyuan with some things, he carefully investigated little by little. Heaven didn't disappoint those who worked hard. Finally, he found something useful. Just the little bit of information that surfaced made him hate Patriarch Pei to the bone. Back then, when he was still a prince, he went down south and met the daughter of the Pei family by chance. He fell in love at first sight. At that time, the current clan leader Pei and his brother were fighting for the position of clan leader. That kind of fight was not inferior to the fight for the position of clan leader. It was just that the scope of the fight was not as big. The current clan leader Pei's brother grabbed onto this matter and did not let it go. He said that not only was it related to the imperial family, it was also against the teachings of the ancestors. The clan leader Pei loved his daughter so much that he even did some inappropriate things. However, in the end, he chose the family and gave up on himself. Not only did he let his youngest daughter die suddenly, he also heartlessly removed her from the family tree. Because of this, he was very depressed for a period of time. However, Min Yuhan realized that to a certain extent, this matter had established his unshakable position as the successor. Min Yuhan also understood the current clan leader, Pei's character, from various aspects. The more he understood, the more frightened, and at the same time, the more he hated him. As the clan leader of the Pei family, he might be impeccable for the benefit of the entire family. However, he was cold-blooded and heartless. He was ruthless and his methods were ruthless. As long as he thought it was worth it, he would not even blink an eye. As long as he thought it was worth it, he would even give up on his own family. He would even use all kinds of schemes. In his eyes, there were only useful people and useless people. The former could be doted on in every possible way. The latter, under normal circumstances, would be completely ignored. If they bumped into him, he would not hesitate to trample them into the mud. Because of this further understanding, he did not think that the incident back then was just a coincidence. He further investigated. Although there was no concrete evidence, according to his guess, Feng Wu being seen by Emperor Cheng was perhaps not an accident at all. It was a setup, and this person was most likely the old clan leader Pei. Min Yuhan once again became a trapped beast. Bit by bit, he rushed into the Pei family to confront him face to face. Previously, he did not understand the reason why the clan leader, Pei, did this, until he understood that the Pei family had been paying attention to Jin Qinhuang all these years. Until he knew that it was possible that the old thing had kidnapped Jin Qinhuang. It was as if he was enlightened. He thought of a possibility. All the schemes were perhaps for one thing. A prince with the Pei family's bloodline. As long as the operation was done properly, the Pei family entering the imperial court would be a matter of pushing the boat with the current. Although it was only a guess, but after thinking it over and over again, this possibility was very large. Moreover, he completely did not have a reason to exonerate that old thing. He was so sure that it could be said that he hated that old thing to the bones, especially when the other party put on a hypocritical face and sighed to him, saying that the Pei family had wronged him. He hated that he could not drink his blood and eat his flesh. But what he was even more shocked about was that his hatred was monstrous, yet he did not show the slightest bit of it and feigned civility. However, this plan could not keep up with the changes. No one would have thought that because of him, Emperor Cheng, who was very suspicious, would kill Xuan Xiu in a rage. Moreover, Xuan Xiu's only son was born as a devil. Even though Emperor Cheng treated his son very well, he did not give him any rights. Probably because of this, the Pei family did not come knocking on his door earlier. Now, that old thing finally made a move on Jin Qinhuang. How could he endure it? Wang Ye, the Pei family has malicious intentions, especially the Pei family's clan head, that old thing. In order to achieve his goal, he would do anything. Wang Ye, please be careful. That old thing's actions have been known by you. It seems that he is not very secretive. Li Honyuan was indifferent. It was not contempt, but he felt that it was better than contempt. Digression. Because it was even less before, he was too embarrassed to ask his relatives for monthly tickets. But because there was an event, he shamelessly asked. So, my relatives, please, https://www.bicken.com/11/118076653600. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 316. Min Yuhan forced a smile. Hearing what your highness said, you must not have been misled by the other party. Thinking about it, with your highness's wisdom, how could you be so easily bullied by that kind of person? You have a lot of opinions about him, and even a lot of resentment. What, did you discover something new in the past year? Li Honyuan didn't comment on his flowers. Instead, he casually tapped on the booklet under his hand. The hatred in Min Yuhan's eyes was directly released at this moment. But then she realized that she should not lose her composure. She closed her eyes fiercely, and when she opened them again, the emotions in them were completely gone. After thinking for a while, she speculated about what she had found out. It's not strange that that old thing would do such a thing. Li Honyuan did not have any emotions, however. Speaking of which, to a certain extent, this prince should be grateful to him. Without his move, this prince might not exist. How can it not exist? Without this matter, you should be my son. Min Yuhan was so agitated that she blurted out such a rebellious thing. Li Honyuan laughed mockingly, looking at Min Yuhan as if he was looking at a dead person. Min Yuhan felt a chill all over her body, and only then did she realize that she had said something inappropriate. Your Highness, please forgive this commoner. This commoner was just momentarily, even if she married you back then. The child she gave birth to will have the blood of you and her. So, what does this have to do with this prince? Can your blood be the same as the one on the dragon throne and produce the same offspring? Even if you have the same father and mother, the two children will be completely different. Li Honyuan did not seem to be angry, and his mood seemed to be quite good. Your Highness is right. This commoner was impetuous and did not mean to offend you. Please forgive me. If there is nothing else, you can leave. This prince still has to go to the tribute institution." Li Hongyuan's expression changed in an instant, and he unceremoniously asked her to leave. This commoner heard that the Min family has a boat from Chongzhou Prefecture to Chuanzhou Prefecture with Your Highness. Does Your Highness know the person on the boat? Min Yuhan hesitated. Pei Xiuying. Li Hongyuan directly pointed out, "That's all you have? Is this king's lecherous reputation so deeply rooted in people's hearts? This commoner has worried too much. This commoner will take his leave." Min Yuhan bowed and left. Speaking of which, Min Yuhan was simply too concerned. To a certain extent, he really treated Li Hongyuan as his own son. Of course, this was only in his heart. He no longer had any expectations or attachments to the world. Now, he only wanted to do his best to help Fu Cheng's child ascend the throne. Perhaps he would add one more point to prevent that old thing from getting what he wanted. This latter point, perhaps he didn't need to do anything himself. Looking at Jin Qinhuang's attitude, it could be said that he would end up trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. He must let him die with a grievance. There was also Pei Xiuying. Even someone like her was being compared to Bai Xiuying. He had to do something. After exiting the door, Min Yuhan's face seemed to have changed. It was as if he was shrouded in gloom and pain. He was trying his best to restrain himself. If Jingwan saw this, she would probably gasp in amazement again. These acting skills were amazing. Speaking of which, how many people were staring at Li Hongyuan now? Those who came to find him would naturally be known by all parties. At this time, it was very difficult to secretly come to see him. As such, they might as well visit him openly. Those who didn't know the reason would naturally allow him to guess and inquire. Those who knew the reason, what could they do? They wouldn't say a word. When he heard that Jin Wangye was going to Jiangnan, Min Yuhan had been in a state of anxiety for quite some time. At this time, it was already close to his eyelids. It was reasonable that he couldn't help but visit. Those who frequently interacted with the Pei family's main family would sooner or later discover some clues just from his face. As for Cheng Di, would he be worried that this matter would be known by others? Naturally not. In fact, other people didn't know that Li Hongyuan first knew about his birth mother from Cheng Di's mouth. At that time, it was because of Pei Shi and the imperial Gui Fei herself that her birth was concealed. Cheng Di's taboo was never this, but the death of the imperial Gui Fei. What was even more taboo was that he killed her with his own hands. If this layer of relationship was exposed, he wouldn't care as long as there was no contact between them. This time, he sent Yu Zhongqing to follow Li Hongyuan to prevent this son from winning over the officials of Jiangnan. It was also to prevent him from coming into contact with Pei Shi's people. If they didn't come into contact, it was naturally good for everyone. If they did, he would have to take some measures in the future. Of course, this was his most beloved son after all. It was just restricting his freedom so that he couldn't leave the capital. If Pei Shi tried to use his son to do something, he wouldn't be soft-hearted. In any case, he didn't have a good impression of Pei Shi. Li Hongyuan looked at the door, lost in thought for a moment. He retracted his gaze, looked at the book, and casually threw it to an E. Do as you see fit. An E took it and made a sound of agreement. Li Hongyuan still took a stroll around the tribute court. It seemed that there wasn't any change, but in fact, he had another plan in his heart. The number of people he wanted to kill and deter seemed to have increased. Although the main residence of the Min clan wasn't in Chuanzhou Fu, it wasn't willing to leave Chuanzhou Fu. There were quite a few Min clan members in Chuanzhou Fu. For example, the Min clan siblings who arrived at Chuanzhou Fu with Li Hongyuan were still in the Fu city. Speaking of which, these two people were very close to Min Yuhan. Their grandfather was Min Yuhan's cousin. This good-looking, good-tempered, and knowledgeable maternal grandfather had just gone out for a trip. But when he came back, he immediately collapsed. He was directly carried down from the carriage, But this startled everyone in the residence. They hurriedly brought him into the house and called for a doctor. They were busy saving people inside the house, and outside the house, they began to interrogate the manservant about what had happened. The manservant was also trembling with fear. Old master went to pay his respects to Jin Qin Wang. When he came out, he didn't look too good. In the end, in the carriage, many of the younger generation were filled with righteous indignation, wondering if Jin Qin Wang had done something to him. As for the head of the residence, she seemed to be silent. Obviously, she was the one who knew the truth. After a moment, the old madam sighed. Sinful, the younger generation didn't understand, and asked one after another. The old madam waved her hand, telling them not to ask too much. This matter was a secret between the Pei clan and the imperial family. It was better not to know. When the doctor came out, he asked the reason for fainting. Sure enough, it was due to excessive stimulation. In addition, his body wasn't very good and he had been depressed recently. As the sister-in-law, she went into the room to take a look. Even though he was unconscious, he was still restless. His mouth kept shouting something. Only she knew that it was 2 words. Hey. Digression. This chapter is still a little short. I didn't reach 10,000 chapters. I'll work hard tomorrow. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653611. HTML. There's an error in the chapter. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile edition website, ambicken.com. Chapter 317. As the son of an aristocratic family, you're actually such an infatuated person. It's been almost 30 years, and you still can't let go. She didn't know whether to sigh or ridicule him. It was normal for a son of an aristocratic family to have many wives and concubines and heaps of children. For a woman like this, not only did he not marry for life, he didn't even have a servant girl to warm his bed. That was the oddity and the object of ridicule. Many people would be disappointed, and many people would say that he didn't look like a man when it came to love. But from a woman's point of view, how many people didn't agree with him on the surface, but their hearts were sour and jealous. They were sour because they couldn't meet a man who only cared about them. They were jealous of the woman he was thinking about. Then she ordered people to serve him well and inform her as soon as he was ready. This person's curiosity was not so easy to extinguish. Sometimes, the more she stopped him, the more he wanted to know. This group of Min Shi's juniors secretly wanted to find the truth. But this matter was obviously related to Jin Qin Wang. What could be related to Jin Qin Wang? It was said that people loved to imagine a love and hate relationship. Not to mention other things, they still knew the reason why Min Yuhan didn't marry. It was said that his fiancée, Pei Shi's daughter, had a sudden illness not long before the marriage. He was deeply in love with his fiancée, and the other party's death was a huge blow to him. He was once unable to recover from the setback, and it took several years for him to recover. Even so, he was always traveling outside. It was said that Pei Shi's daughter was recognized as the #1 beauty in Jiangnan. Even the current Pei Yuing was not as good as her. If you ask me, maybe granduncle's fiancée didn't die at all, but was snatched away by Jin Shang. We all know the relationship between Pei Shi and the Li imperial family. For the sake of the family's reputation, it was announced that she died of a sudden illness. When encountering this kind of thing, isn't that how everyone handles it? Maybe Jin Qin Wang is the child of great-granduncle's fiancée, and the kind that looks very similar. That's why he got such a big shock just because he met her once. The girl that Pei Yuing called Yuan said as if it was a matter of fact. The others listened and looked at each other. What was that? It sounded like nonsense, but it seemed to make sense. Little did they know that this brain had already guessed most of the truth. On the way back to Chuanshan, I saw Jin Qin Wang once. Although it was just a quick glance, but now that I think about it, I feel that he looks more and more like a member of the Pei family. The others didn't know what to say. Yuan, some things can't be said carelessly. If outsiders hear it, I'm just saying it in my own house. How can I let outsiders hear it? She inadvertently caught a glimpse of the old madam coming out of the room. The old madam had a speechless look on her face. She immediately went up to her with a smile and took her arm. Third grandmother, am I right? She then shook her arm like a spoiled child. Old madam reached out and poked her forehead. You, don't think too much about it. Although he was at home, he still had to be prepared for any eventualities. Many things were caused by careless talk. Yuan's words should be taken as a joke. Don't spread it around. All right, let's disperse. Everyone looked at each other again. Could it be that Yuan had guessed correctly? That was really two. The others were still in an indescribable mood. Instead, it was Miss Yuan's elder brother who couldn't suppress his excitement. If it was really like this, in terms of seniority, Ma Yingying was Jin Qinhuang's niece. He was a dignified Qinhuang. What kind of beauty couldn't he have? He wouldn't be so shameless as to forcefully snatch his own niece. He really didn't want face. Pei sure also wanted face. She absolutely wouldn't allow this kind of thing to happen. How could he know that the truth was the opposite of what he thought? Miss Yuan understood her elder brother very well, especially when it came to Ma Yingying Jejia. Just by looking at his expression, she knew what he was thinking. She secretly rolled her eyes. Even if there was no Jin Qinhuang, it still wouldn't be your turn. However, she was also very clear. Don't look at how her elder brother was deeply in love with Ma Yingying Jejia and had the attitude of not marrying anyone else. However, even if Ma Yingying Jejia married someone else in the end, he would at most be depressed for a period of time. He absolutely wouldn't reach the level of great-granduncle. It was even more impossible for him to not marry for his entire life and not have a single person by his side. Right now, there were no less than 3 Tongfang maids. This elder brother of hers, in essence, was the same as other young masters of aristocratic families. Min Yuan wasn't unconscious for too long. It was only half a day before he woke up. It was true that he was unconscious, and the reason for his coma was also true. It was just that he didn't restrain himself. Instead, he repeatedly thought about those things that caused him the most pain and hatred. This infinitely magnified the negative emotions, causing the final result to not be surprising. After waking up, his entire person didn't seem to be much different from before. However, those who were close to him could clearly feel that he was more silent and more indifferent. This was a heart disease. As the saying goes, a heart disease needs to be treated with medicine of the heart. However, this medicine of the heart was long gone. Thus, no one could do anything about it. Min Yuan rested for 2 days. Then, he got someone to pack his things. He was going to the main residence of the Pei family. To be exact, he was going to meet the Pei family head. The Min family and the Pei family's old residences were both in county cities and not in the prefectural city. Their residences took up almost half of the entire county city. In fact, the number of people with other surnames wasn't less than in other counties. It could be imagined that the county where their old residences were located was at least twice the size of an ordinary county city. The degree of prosperity wasn't inferior to the prefectural city, but it was also more peaceful and harmonious, clean and orderly. Of course, in such a place, the county magistrate was just a decoration. Not to mention the county city. It should be a large area of the entire county. That was all private territory. If anything happened, it would be their family affairs and private affairs. The Pei family and the Min family belonged to 2 different prefectures. However, they weren't far apart. A spacious road was specially opened between the 2 families. It was only 300 to 400 miles from the Quanzhou prefectural city to the Min family's main residence. It was far more convenient and faster than taking the regular road to the Pei family's main residence. In other words, if Min Yuan wanted to go to the Pei family's main residence, he had to go home first. This time, going to the Pei family's main residence might cause him to become enemies. However, so what? He didn't care at all. No one knew what Min Yuhan wanted to do except himself. If Li Hongyuan knew, he would probably still be indifferent. In his opinion, it was purely superfluous. A few days later, the third round of the provincial examination ended smoothly. Most of the people who walked out of the examination hall felt that it was so simple. In fact, it was because the easiest questions were placed last. The questions set by a group of big shots in the imperial court should be more difficult. The difficult questions were placed first. In comparison, the questions at the end were naturally easier. Because there were people who came out in the first round, the people outside knew that the order of the examination had been adjusted. Everyone would think that there would be an impact. Those who took the examination for the first time were better off. Those who took it for granted would be more affected the more times they took the examination. Those who were waiting might not be more relaxed than those who were taking the examination. Without a doubt, there were those who were beaming with joy, while there were also those who were wailing loudly. Naturally, there were also those who were calm. However, no matter what, after being in the examination hall for so long, 99% of them were mentally and physically exhausted. It was only right for them to have a good sleep. These people didn't care. The examination hall had already started to mark the papers. Every paper would go through at least 3 people's hands. With the King of Hell in charge, no one dared to be careless. There were only 3 days to come out with the results. It was also a big project. Li Hongyuan waved his hand and left. He turned around and went to the treasury of the Quanzhou prefecture. Seeing that the treasury was almost piled up with gold and silver, Li Hongyuan casually picked up a few silver ingots and gold bricks and looked at them. He threw them back. He didn't control his strength, and the silver ingots scattered and fell to the ground. Box up all the gold and silver and ship them back to the capital. In the Quanzhou prefecture, because it wasn't time for taxes to be paid into the national treasury, they didn't think of directly sending them back to the capital. That was why they came up with such a childish idea. Now, with the previous example, they didn't even think about it and directly sent them back to the capital. As such, who would dare to have any ideas? As for the origin of these gold and silver, Li Hongyuan didn't want to know at all. He was 100% sure that it wasn't originally from the treasury. Li Hongyuan had stayed in the Quanzhou prefecture for so long. If they still hadn't prepared for this, it could only be said that they had put their necks under the butcher's knife. If they didn't want the opportunity given, it could be said that there was a hole in their heads. Fortunately, in front of their lives and money, these people still had hope. It was just unknown how much each of them had taken from their pockets. When the officials of the Quanzhou prefecture learned of Li Hongyuan's decision, they seemed to have expected it. They were all silent. As for what they were thinking in their hearts, it was unknown. After checking the treasury, the next step was naturally the accounts. If they thought it was the same as the Quanzhou prefecture, they would be gravely mistaken. The good show had just begun. Digression. I'm going out and might not have time to write tonight. Dear friends, please forgive me. Those with bad hands express that an hour might not be as good as 10 minutes for others. Woo, https://www.bicken.com/11/1180/6653613. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 318. After checking the treasury, the next step was naturally to check the accounts. If one thought that it was the same as Quanzhou prefecture, then one would be gravely mistaken. The good show had only just begun. Of course, there were still similarities. All the officials gathered together and made their own beds in the courtyard. Other than that, they had to take care of their own meals. Don't think that by having your family send your meals over, you could eat comfortably. The premise of comfort was not being picked on by Jin Qinhuang. In front of this person, he would say, "This meal has 2 more dishes than Ben Wang." In front of that person, he would say, "So and so, you're quite enjoying it." Or else it would be, "Wang Fei advocates frugality," causing the officials' meals to get smaller and smaller, with each meal more shabby than the last. However, after 2 days, each and every one of them was just a little better than eating pickled vegetables and eating steamed buns. At home, they tried every possible way to tamper with that little bit of food. Once they tasted a certain familiar taste, they would never eat a second bite. Now, tears were streaming down their cheeks as they secretly vowed that they would cherish it in the future. How could their little actions escape the eyes of the black-robe guards and Li Hongyuan's imperial bodyguards, especially the secret contacts? However, they all followed Jin Qinhuang's instructions and looked on coldly, as if they did not see anything. Speaking of which, if they did not do something, how would they be able to get hold of more information that could be used against them? Sometimes, the more you did, the more mistakes you made. Now, it was obviously this kind of situation, especially when they were doing little things under the eyes of a living king of hell. It was purely because they did not want to die quickly enough. The most direct result was that Jin Qinhuang Fei became more and more greedy, more and more black-hearted. She clearly sent gifts again and again, but she still did not see her family's return home. Speaking of which, although they guessed that it was Jin Qinhuang Fei who was greedy, but with so many things, they did not really hide it. The possibility that Jin Qinhuang did not know was close to zero. Such unbridled greed. Did it also have Jin Qinhuang's tacit consent or even incitement? Therefore, as long as he didn't know the exact answer, his imagination wouldn't stop. Jingwan didn't care what those people thought. She was now working hard to squeeze those officials dry of their assets that didn't belong to them. Naturally, Li Hongyuan was incomparably supportive. However, he still kept saying that his wife was too soft-hearted. According to the extravagance of these officials, their little bit of salary wasn't even enough to feed their family. Therefore, the so-called little bit that belonged to them was actually already gone. If it was up to him, he would squeeze them dry until they were poor and had to tighten their belts to survive. Jiangnan was a land of affluence. On the other hand, the price of living there was actually higher than in the capital. A mansion could easily cost hundreds of taels of silver. In the capital, there were not many mansions that were worth millions of taels of silver. An official in Jiangnan, unless he did not engage in social activities or raise servants, lived a simple life as a family and lived in a small courtyard. That bit of salary could probably be raised, but was it possible? Every place paid attention to connections, paid attention to relationships. It was impossible to be completely independent of the circle. In the capital, with the support of the highest ruler, you could still be a lonely official. Elsewhere, it was simply a fool's dream. Normally, it would be the family opening a few shops, buying some land, and building some manors. Otherwise, it would be the family members who were proficient in gold and stone. Of course, these were not the only channels. What was abnormal was naturally the gray income. Under normal circumstances, this was the most important. Jingwan thought that it was fine to just cut off this part. She didn't want to make people unable to live. What about those people who were plundered? There's one thing that didn't seem to be told to Wan Wan. Li Suyen accidentally knew something before. 3 years ago, there was an earthquake in Minshan County. There were 20,000 people who survived, and they reported 50,000 to the court. The court allocated 50,000 silver to settle down the 50,000 people, and all of it was embezzled. Do you know what happened to those 20,000 people? Jingwan's expression was not very good. Displaced? Living in poverty? Li Hongyuan touched Jingwan's face. From this point of view, Wan Wan is indeed a Jiao who was raised in a boudoir. She is too naive. Those people were pushed into the pile of corpses and burned to death together. Seeing Jingwan's face turn pale in an instant, he knew it was a little cruel for her. However, the cold smile on his face did not disappear. Minshan County is in the territory of Chuanzhou Prefecture. Wanwan, tell me, in this matter, from the governor and governor of Shannon Commandery, to the governor of Chuanzhou Prefecture, to the magistrate of Minshan County, who didn't do anything, who is innocent. Even if they don't want to be involved, they are forced to be involved. Otherwise, they will be turned into ashes like those people. Jingwan looked at him. She had to admit that this man was not a good person. He could be cold-blooded and cold-hearted towards people or things that he did not care about. He could calmly say the cruelest things, and did not even mind dragging others into the cruel reality. Why did you tell me? Under normal circumstances, didn't love want her to maintain her senses of beauty in the outside world as much as possible? Of course, I want Wanwan to know and understand me completely. Wanwan should naturally stay with the real me. Being fake is not my pursuit. One is marked by the company one keeps. Jingwan seemed to be talking to herself softly. It doesn't matter whether Wanwan is marked by red or black. However, it's good enough that you have some black ink on you. It's really not easy to dye you as black as me. In his previous life, Wanwan had experienced a lot of difficulties and hardships. However, even when she was dying, she did not become cynical and maintained her innocence. Jingwan smiled noncommittally. However, it was obvious that she would be more ruthless when she slaughtered people. It was no wonder that Li Hongyuan would be so ruthless to Chuanzhou Prefecture. After the incident in Minshan County, Chuanzhou Prefecture had the most people dismounted. At the same time, Min Yuhan returned to the main residence of the Min family. After staying for a night, she turned to the main residence of the Pei family. There was an old man who looked amiable and wise, and a young girl with an elegant temperament and a calm demeanor, who was beautiful and gentle. One old and one young, they were exceptionally harmonious. However, Min Yuhan was extremely ruthless. She was almost certain that this old thing was raising his great-granddaughter in the same way as raising his daughter. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653614. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 319. Clan leader Pei put down the chess piece in his hand and turned his head to look at Min Yuhan, who was walking towards him. It was as though he was looking at his beloved younger generation. After all, it was important to have grandchildren and not children. Towards the younger generation, they were very strict. The more they cared about them, the stricter they would be. Min Yuhan's fondness was always on the surface. It was as though the other party was not a man in his 40s. At this moment, he was waving at Min Yuhan with a loving smile on his face when he did not know anything. He might have been touched. That feeling was as though 20 or 30 years had not existed. Uncle Pei was reminiscing about his daughter. That was the girl that he had always placed in his heart. Hence, he did not care at all. In the past, even when he was often away, he would occasionally come back. His relationship with the other party was very harmonious. He could even naturally put away the frost on his body and treat the other party as his own father. However, after he found out that everything was a lie and a pretense, this seemingly kind person was actually the most ruthless and cold-blooded. He had always maintained his good attitude towards him because he wanted to better maintain the relationship between the two families. Now he finally understood what kind of situation the Pei family was in. In fact, when he thought about it carefully, it was simply unbelievable that the Pei family could maintain their relationship for such a long time. It could be said to be a miracle. Min Yuhan walked over unhurriedly. Before he could greet him, clan leader Pei had already asked him to sit down. In the past, regardless of whether he was sincere or pretending, he would always greet clan leader Pei politely. However, today he no longer wanted to pretend. Hence, no matter what the other party's attitude was, he would not accept this greeting. Pei Xiuying had already automatically made way for Min Yuhan. When Min Yuhan looked over, she pursed her lips and smiled. Pei Xiuying greets Uncle Min. Min Yuhan did not sit down. Instead, his gaze fell on Pei Xiuying. Logically speaking, even if he was an elder or an ancestor and the two families were close, as a man, it was very rude and even impolite to look at the other family's daughter without hiding anything. It was not the first time he met Pei Xiuying, but it was the first time he did so. When he came back last year and saw Pei Xiuying, Min Yuhan felt that the other party was a well-educated and gentle girl. She had a bit of Wanwan style in the past. Earlier, she was just a little girl, and he did not have any impression of her. However, he thought that if Wanwan was still around, the daughter she gave birth to would also be this outstanding. But now, the more he looked at her, the more disgusted he felt. There was a saying that went trying to paint a tiger, but ended up looking like a dog. Especially when he knew that the other party did not reject his great-grandfather's arrangement, and even personally went to meet him. In Chuanzhoufu, he had asked Yuan Yuan about the journey from Chongzhoufu to Chuanzhoufu. After hearing Pei Xiuying's attitude, Yuan Yuan did not understand what was going on, but he was very clear about it. Before anything happened, she started to spy on the enemy's situation and attempted to provoke Jin Qinhuang Fei's authority. She was simply jackalls of the same tribe as her grandfather, arrogant and self-righteous. Who did she think Jin Qinhuang was? A wooden puppet who would do everything according to your plan? Even if they were his parents, they would not force their son to sleep with any woman. Moreover, where did the confidence come from to think that the other party would definitely sleep with you? Was it just based on that face? Did she think that all men in the world were shallow and stupid, unable to control their pants when they saw a beautiful woman? Moreover, to put it bluntly, this woman was originally born from a weak background. If you were in a weak position in your family background, then sleeping with her would be a waste of time. You, Pei Yuing, and Jin Qinhuang were in this situation, willing to degrade yourself and take the initiative to be a concubine. Could you be any more despicable? A noble daughter of an aristocratic family? Sure enough, this family did not live up to its name. Even the upbringing had become so unbearable. There was no pride, no real nobility, and even less that lofty and unyielding character. Pei Yuing was somewhat uncomfortable under Min Yuhan's gaze, but from beginning to end, she kept her eyes down and maintained a faint smile. If you don't want to smile, then don't smile. In fact, this kind of smile that you thought was perfect was very disgusting. It was not a smile that came from the heart. It was not a sincere smile that transcended boundaries. Min Yuhan sat down and casually picked up a chess piece. Is it the white piece's turn? Without waiting for clan head Pei to respond, he placed the piece. What kind of person was clan head Pei? He was a sly old fox, and naturally had a good grasp of people's changes. Furthermore, Min Yuhan's performance was so obvious. A strange look flashed through his eyes. He picked up the black piece and continued to place the piece. Yuhan, you haven't come to see me for a while. Isn't that so? Great-grandfather was just nagging about Uncle Min. Pei Yuing interrupted with a chuckle. Min Yuhan looked at the chessboard and pondered for a moment. After placing the piece, he said unhurriedly, I've been a little busy recently. Please forgive me, Uncle. Oh, what have you been busy with? Clan head Pei asked naturally, the kind that was very familiar and affectionate. What have I been busy with? It's considered a major event in my life, Min Yuhan said indifferently. A major event in your life. Yuhan, are you finally going to get married? Good, good, good. This is really great. For so many years, you didn't have anyone by your side who cared about you. Now that you've finally thought it through, it can't be better. Clan head Pei seemed very happy, and his happiness was mixed with emotion. Is that so? Then I have to congratulate Uncle Min, Pei Yuing said with a smile, as if she was very happy for him. Min Yuhan suddenly smiled. Actually, I still have to ask for Uncle's permission on this matter. As soon as he said this, Clan Head Pei suddenly had a bad premonition. Han, what do you mean? Could it be that you want Uncle to be your matchmaker? No problem. Min Han held the piece between his fingers and looked at Clan Head Pei. That's not it. Because of Chun, Uncle has always felt sorry for me. Why don't you marry Pei Yuing to me? Although Pei Yuing is far from Chun, this bit of elegance is enough. What do you think, Uncle? Not to mention how ugly Pei Yuying's expression was. The smile on Clan Head Pei's face disappeared, and he looked solemn. Han, this joke is too much. Joke? No, I'm serious. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653615. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website, ambicken.com. Chapter 320. Han, you're Pei Yingying's elder. The Min family and the Pei family are family friends. If you act like this, it's not good for either of our families. Uncle, you don't think it's good? Min Han interrupted him calmly. I think it's good. I once thought that Pei Yingying was specially trained by Uncle. Without a doubt, it's good. After all, Uncle has always treated me like a great-grandchild. You're especially compassionate toward me. I'm very grateful to Uncle. As for the relationship between our families, since it's a marriage alliance, it's natural that the relationship between our families should be better. Pei Yingying was screaming crazily in her heart. Who do you think you are? What right do you have? What right do you have? She clenched her handkerchief so tightly that her fingernails almost broke the skin of her palm. However, because of her upbringing, she tried her best to restrain herself. Not only that, she even had a faint smile on her face. In fact, if she really exploded, Min Han might think more highly of her. However, she was still thinking about the bearing of an aristocratic family's daughter. Speaking of which, Patriarch Pei's cultivation was indeed deeper. At this moment, he was still slightly solemn. He stroked his beard and didn't show any signs of anger. Instead, he looked at Min Han with some tolerance, as if he was looking at a junior who had made a mistake. Han, I don't know what's wrong with you today. Did you drink a few more cups before coming here? Or is there some other reason? I hope this matter will end here. It's best for everyone. Min Han's smile became more obvious and more genuine. Many people hadn't seen such a bright smile in many years. This person seemed to have become more than 10 years younger. However, no matter who saw it, they would feel that this smile was especially dazzling. Uncle, do you think I'm not clear-headed? No, I'm very clear-headed. In the past few decades of my life, I've never been more clear-headed than now. I don't understand. Why would Uncle feel that it's not good? Could it be that Uncle actually looks down on me? Was it all fake? If it was so easy to stop, he wouldn't have come. He was here to find trouble. He was even prepared to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Pei family. If he continued to feign civility, he wouldn't be able to bear it. These are two completely different things. How can you confuse them together? Han, you have deep feelings for Pei. Treating her granddaughter like this is an insult to her. Moreover, you're an elder. Acting like this in front of the younger generation is simply disrespectful. You're not only embarrassing yourself, you're embarrassing yourself. Hearing this, Min Han even laughed out loud, as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. Uncle, what you said is interesting. If Momo knew in the underworld that you, as a father, were preparing to give her grandniece to her son as a concubine, she might just climb out of the mausoleum. Embarrassing? Who's the one who's losing face? Was there anyone else in Pei? The Min families know this matter. How was there anyone else in the Mins? Houses how and how? How? No. This is as that person is. Yan the families is our s havs havsa s tvs tss in this have a have to cause v had to have a misunderstanding. Min Yuhan patiently explained her findings. Uncle, tell me, where's the misunderstanding? Pei's heart calmed down a little. If that was the case, he could deal with it. However, he realized that Min Yuhan's acuity and his concern for the Pei family seemed to be a little too much. If that was the case, he had to think of a way to get rid of this person. This kind of person was a threat to the Pei family. Yuhan has indeed misunderstood. Uncle, can you swear to the heavens that you don't have such a plan and you won't do it in the future? If you do, the Pei family will be destroyed. Min Yuhan's voice was cold and her eyes were burning. What she said was the most vicious curse for the Pei family. What did Pei care about the most? That was the Pei family. Min Yuhan's words had touched his bottom line and touched his reverse scale. It could be said that she had truly angered him. He did not even bother to hide the hostility in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at a dead person. Min Yuhan met his gaze but was not afraid at all. Instead, she smiled even more casually. The aura of an aristocratic family's young master was even more prominent. It made people feel that the aura between them had swapped. Pei was the one who was suppressed. It's just an oath. If there's no such thing, then there's naturally nothing. Furthermore, in this world, how many people take oaths seriously? Uncle, don't you think so? As long as Uncle swears to the heavens, I will immediately kowtow and apologize to Uncle. I will even apologize to Pei Yingying. These words were basically blocking Pei Yingying's path. If he made an oath now and went against it in the future, he would not only be breaking his promise. Pei Yingying suddenly smiled. Yuhan has really grown up after being away for so many years. There was a hint of gratification in his words. Min Yuhan nodded her head indifferently. I've been stupid for too long. I have to grow up. Otherwise, I won't even know how I died. Pei Yingying had already put away the emotions that made her angry. The smile on her face had also disappeared. She looked even more composed and dignified. She had already sensed that the atmosphere at this moment was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. There was also a heaviness that she did not know about. This was also the first time she really looked at this granduncle of the Min family. She had once looked down on this granduncle of hers. She thought that he was addicted to love and could not extricate himself. As an aristocratic family's young master, he did not think about returning to the family. Instead, he wandered around all year round. He was simply not a man. He was the shame of an aristocratic family. Such a person should be banished from the family forever. In her opinion, such a man was always a little incompetent and could not be shown in public. Now, it seemed that this was not the case. Uncle might as well consider my proposal. Although I am Pei Yingying's elder, Jin Qinhuang is also one. Jin Qinhuang is related by blood. This has a greater impact. Moreover, Jin Qinhuang has a Wang Fei who is officially married to him. Jin Qinhuang Fei's grandfather is the Minister of Personnel and holds great power. Her adoptive mother is Great Princess Royal and is extraordinarily honorable. Pei Yingying was sent over by you. According to Pei Shi's identity and background, she does not even have the qualifications to be at Sifei. After entering the inner courtyard of Jin Qinhuang Fu, it is already good that you can bring 2 servant girls to serve you. Now, in the inner courtyard of Jin Qinhuang Fu, other than the Wang Fei, there are no other concubines. All the power is naturally in the hands of Jin Qinhuang Fei. In the face of a person who is clearly a threat, do you think that Jin Qinhuang Fei will be indifferent? Or do you think that Pei Yingying can compete with Jin Qinhuang Fei with just 1 or 2 people? Otherwise, do you think that before Jin Qinhuang Fei returns to the capital, Pei Yingying can win over Jin Qinhuang Fei's heart? She might even get pregnant before marriage. Min Yuhan seemed to be slowly analyzing the pros and cons, but that sentence was stabbing a knife into the chest of Pei clan head and Pei Yingying. mentioning Jingwan's identity and background, mentioning Pei Yingying's identity and background. As a daughter of an aristocratic family, you look down on them. Who would have thought that they did not take you seriously at all? Pei Yingying was once full of confidence that she could defeat Jingwan and become the final winner. But after seeing Jingwan, her confidence took a big hit. Now that she heard Min Yuhan's words, although she did not want to admit it, it was a fact that could not be any more real. That little bit of confidence she had invisibly shattered. Pei Clan had glanced at his great-granddaughter and roughly knew that some of the previous efforts had been destroyed. Looking at Min Yuhan, who might not have smiled as much in the past 20 years, there were two possibilities for such a big change. First, he was suddenly stimulated and knew that he went to see Jin Qinhuang. Second, it was accumulated over time. It was just that he hid it too well and did not reveal it. Now, for some reason, he no longer hid it. Perhaps it was related to Jin Qinhuang. Pei Clan head did not know which type Min Yuhan belonged to, but there was no doubt that he could no longer treat him with the same attitude as before. This was no longer a prospective son-in-law that he could manipulate, but a poisonous snake that could bite him at any time. Things will be different if you marry me, Min Yuhan continued. At the very least, you will be officially married to me. Your reputation may still be damaged, but if it is revealed that uncle raised such a girl as compensation for what you did in the past out of guilt, others may even praise you for being affectionate and righteous. Min Yuhan's attitude was calm, neither fast nor slow, but the sarcasm contained in it was obvious. Pei Ying's suppressed emotions surged again. She really could not bear it. What does Min family's granduncle think I am? Min Yuhan glanced at her with undisguised ridicule in his eyes. What does your great-grandfather think you are? In my eyes, you are a little higher than that. He wants you to be a concubine, the kind without a matchmaker. I want you to be my wife. It is perfectly justified. Sherbois, you gave her to Jin Qinhuang. Are you preparing not to tarnish Pei Clan's reputation? Or are you preparing to remove Pei Ying from the Pei Clan like Wanwan? Or are you preparing to let Jin Qinhuang take the blame and let the world think that he took a fancy to Pei Clan's daughter's beauty? So he snatched her. And you stood out to say that you were not the clan head and could not make the decision. Now, if you want to stand on the side of your own people, even if you can't compete with the imperial family, you have to be a strong backing for your family's young lady. Pei Clan head did not speak and looked at Min Yuhan. He admitted that the other party had guessed the plan. Then you have a reason to assist Jin Qinhuang and naturally help your family's young lady to fight against Jin Qinhuang Fei. Pull the other off the horse, take the position, and become the mother of the world with the identity of Yuan Empress. Sherbois, do you think that other than you, other than the Pei Clan, everyone else is a fool? Min Yuhan twirled a chess piece and placed it on the chessboard. He did not care whether Pei Clan head had placed a chess piece or not, but he looked at Pei Clan head as if he was looking at a fool. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653616. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 321. Min Yuhan knew that this old fox was not easy to deal with, but since the other party was not in a hurry, he was even less anxious. Today, he was going to completely tear off the old man's face. He wanted to see how thick his skin was to be able to continue carrying out his original plan after tearing off a layer. Aristocratic families have their pride and have a very deep concept of family status. I don't need to remind Uncle of this. Uncle is probably clearer than anyone else. He was clearer than anyone else and looked down on those people more than anyone else. Yet he broke the rules himself and was so hypocritical. Has Uncle ever thought of the consequences of giving Pei Ying to Jin Qinhuang as a concubine? If the most outstanding, legitimate daughter of the main family can be given as a concubine, the other girls would naturally be even more despicable. Even if they wanted to marry back as a legitimate wife, they would feel that it was a disgrace to their own status. In this way, it would really be cats and dogs from all walks of life that could climb up Peyshur's door. Peyshur's men would naturally not be able to marry any good women. Even if they stood at a high position as you wished, could it make up for this? But I think Uncle will not care. After all, there are already signs of this. Who let Peyshur's aristocratic family name exist only in name? The flourishing Peyshur relied on in-laws to survive. If these in-laws knew, would they immediately divorce the woman and cut off all ties? Of course, the Pey family still has many famous scholars supporting them, and they have students all over the world. If they have high positions and generous salaries, they won't forget these teachers. However, if these people know about the actions of Uncle, the Pey family will probably collapse first without external help. It seemed that Peyshur was weighing the pros and cons, but it was also Min Yuhan who did not hold back and continued to stab the knife. He did not leave any face for Peyshur's girls. He peeled off the pretense of peace layer by layer and even threatened them. Had Patriarch Pey not considered these problems? Of course not. So, in the early stages of the matter, he had to hide it internally and externally. Even if he helped Jin Qinhuang, it was best to hide Pei Ying's matter. When the dust settled, it would not be too late to expose it. Peyshur's old-fashioned people were not few, but there were only a few who were obsessed with learning and only liked to indulge in the mountains and rivers. After understanding Peyshur's glorious history, who did not want to restore the glory of the past. So, even if they knew what he did, they would probably remain silent and look to the future. However, man proposes, God disposes. Before he could even do anything, he had already been seen through. Clan leader Pei, who had always been conceited, was actually quite angry in his heart. Min Yuhan seemed to have seen through clan leader Pei's thoughts clearly. She sneered in her heart. He wasn't the only one who saw through your arrangements. The person you schemed against was even more clear about it. Although Min Yuhan wasn't clear about Li Hongyuan's true power, he had been traveling around Jiangnan for nearly a year without leaving a trace. However, at the crucial moment, there would always be someone who would appear at the right time to help him achieve his goal without attracting any attention. Min Yuhan had done this kind of thing before. In the beginning, he let them help to clean up the situation more, but later on, it gradually decreased. However, he did not doubt Li Hongyuan's ability. He wanted to see if you used Jin Qinhuang to achieve your goal, or if you were used by Jin Qinhuang until there was nothing left. Although he and Li Hongyuan had only met twice, but that kind of power was so obvious. If he ascended the throne, he would definitely not tolerate a foreign relative. Peyshur's calculations were so loud that he would not be lenient if he could use them. After using them, he might leave some leeway for you. Otherwise, he would be merciless to burn the bridge after crossing the river. Since Yuhan has already said so, this old man will not hide it. This is Peyshur's matter and has nothing to do with outsiders. Yuhan does not need to worry. Uncle's meaning is that you are determined to do this? Min Yuhan had never thought that he would affect this old thing's decision. If he was so easily swayed, he would not have come to this step today. His original intention was not to stop the other party. Yuhan has already pointed out Peyshur's situation. Peyshur cannot be defeated, so there are some things that must be done. Although he once deceived himself and did not want to admit it, but when it was really pointed out, it was not that he could not bear it. At least on the surface, there was no difference. Falling into Jin Qinhuang's hands, he was afraid that he would be defeated even faster. Perhaps it was not necessary, but it could be done in another way. If you were so ambitious and calculated, no one would be happy. If you were sincere and only focused on doing things, using Peyshur's real strength to fight, perhaps you could achieve unexpected results. Instead, you tried to take shortcuts, rely on nepotism, and use such crooked methods. In this case, Uncle might as well change the candidate. At least she is of the same generation as Jin Qinhuang, and it will look better on your face. If one of your granddaughters is not enough, then two. I remember that uncle still has a pair of twin granddaughters who are not married yet. This is also a big feature. Maybe they will be more attractive. If two of them are not enough, then three. If not, then four. Anyway, you don't lack people in your line. This was in line with Jingwan's lack of quality. Make up for it with quantity. However, this sarcasm had reached an extraordinary level. Even a saint could get angry. Yuhan, there should be a limit to everything. Min Yuhan smiled non-committally. After a confrontation with this old thing, he had almost made up his mind to shed all pretense of cordiality between the two families. However, although his position in the Min family was not low, it was not good for him to decide the family's affairs. Now, the head of the Min family was his elder brother. Moreover, the Min family was not like the Pei family. There were many officials in the Min family, but there were no high positions. Instead, they were more like crops. Even so, the head of the Min family did not have the final say. As a member of the Min family, although he did not have deep feelings for this family, there were still some things that needed to be said. At that time, the difference would probably be him arguing with the Pei family alone, or the Min family arguing with the Pei family. In that case, nephew will take his leave first. Min Yuhan threw the chess piece between his fingers back into the chess box. He stood up slowly and brushed his sleeves. When he was about to leave, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at Pei Yiwei. Pei Yiwei, why don't you consider my opinion? Pei Yiwei's face was a little stiff. Thank you for Min family's grand-uncle's favor. Min Yuhan chuckled. Now it's really interesting. A daughter of an aristocratic family would rather be a concubine than a wife. Speaking of which, if I was born poor and was just an ordinary person, it would be fine if you rejected me. If we were to compare Jin Qinhuang and I, the advantage would probably be that the other party is young and powerful. Don't you know that this young man easily likes the new and hates the old and doesn't know how to dote on others? In the past, he was able to guard for your grandaunt. In the future, he will naturally be able to guard for you. Isn't it better than fighting for affection and scheming against each other? You really won't consider it? Thank you for Min family's grand-uncle's favor. Pei Yiwei still said the same thing. This woman is really superficial. And you, Pei Yiwei, can't even compare to one of your grandaunt's fingers. His clothes fluttered as he left. He was elegant and had a bit of an immortal's aura. He did not seem like someone who would humiliate an unmarried girl so mercilessly. However, this was indeed the case. How could he not see Pei Yiwei's pale face? Clan had Pei looked at his back and slightly narrowed his eyes. He found that this former prospective son-in-law had completely exceeded his expectations. This kind of change was different from the previous one. It was definitely not formed overnight. However, he had been back for almost a year and had seen it many times, but he had not found any clues. He had been on guard since long ago. Clan head Pei was almost 100% sure that Min Yuhan might have found something. Great-grandfather. Pei Yiwei softly called out with a little worry. Clan head Pei turned to look at her. Yiwei, were you affected by your Min family's grand-uncle's words? It's impossible to say that it was not at all. After being humiliated like this, Pei Yiwei was still a girl. It was not an exaggeration to say that she hated Min Yuhan. However, she knew that great-grandfather was not asking about her personal feelings. Between a family and an individual would always be at the back. Even in the face of a great enemy, if it was beneficial to the family, she had to suppress her personal feelings. I'm worried that Min family's grand-uncle will spread the news. That would be very disadvantageous to our Pei family. Don't worry, he won't. He was very certain about this. About Jin Qinhuang, great-grandfather, you don't have to say anything more. Pei family carefully raised me. As a member of Pei family, when Pei family needs me, I will naturally not shirk my duty. As the saying goes, when the nest is overturned, there are no intact eggs. If something happens to Pei family, as a daughter of Pei family, how can I have a good ending? Clan head Pei nodded his head in relief. It's good that you understand. Go back and rest. Yes, Yue will take her leave. After Pei, Yue left. Clan head Pei lowered his head and looked at the chessboard. One black and one white chess piece fell one after another until the winner was decided. He took a sip of tea and slowly exhaled. Zhong, go and deal with the people. He seemed to be careless, but a sentence determined several lives. Naturally, there would be people serving by the side. However, Clan head Pei did not say anything from the beginning. Although the people were dismissed by the housekeeper, called Zhong, they were actually controlled after they left. If they knew something that they should not know, then even Pei Yue's personal maidservant would not be able to survive. Therefore, the biddy sent 2 more maidservants to Pei Yue. Pei Yue just nodded her head and continued to read her book. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653617 HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 322. Many people in the Pei family's main residence knew that something might have happened. In the past, the old master of the Min family would always be treated with great hospitality whenever he came. He was more enthusiastic and grand than anyone else. The clan head would even personally instruct the kitchen to prepare a few dishes. Today, not only did he come and leave, but he also dealt with a few people in the blink of an eye. Everyone's hearts were beating like drums. Even the other masters restrained themselves slightly, not daring to cause any trouble at this time, let alone the servants. Of course, for those who lived in a more remote area because they weren't favored in the Pei family, they didn't have such concerns. After all, they were usually invisible. As expected, a few days later, more than half of the county town, called Pei County, was stirred up. Gongs and drums were played, and the gifts were worth a few streets. It was difficult to not cause a commotion. Most of the outsiders living in Pei County were related to the Pei family. Even if they were only distant relatives or family members of servants in the Pei family's main residence who had been graced and released from slavery, their lives were definitely more prosperous than those in other places. There were no beggars and the like. One had to know that such people couldn't enter at all. Naturally, they were somewhat concerned about the Pei family's main residence, whether it was out of curiosity or the mentality of wanting to join in the fun. Which aristocratic family has come to propose marriage again? Most likely, but this time it looks more grand than before. They're here for the 4th generation's first young lady, right? Someone nodded matter-of-factly. The first young lady's reputation is out there. She's the most outstanding girl in this generation of the Pei family. Naturally, she deserves such a grand occasion. Those who were completely unaware of the situation outside were discussing heartily. However, they didn't know that in the Pei family's main residence, those who received the news were filled with dark clouds. Clan head Pei's relatives, who lived outside the main residence, gathered around him. Some of them were even clan head Pei's elders. Although they were younger than him, no one knew what these people were thinking when they came. It was no wonder that so many people knew about it. One had to know that it wasn't just in the main residence, but also in the other residences of the Pei clan outside the main residence. These people were directly notified by the Min clan. With such great fanfare, naturally, more and more people knew about it. It was to the extent that it spread to all the Pei clan members in Pei County. Of course, there weren't many people who had the guts to approach clan leader Pei, whether they were genuinely concerned about this matter or just there to watch the show. Especially those who married from the Min family. They were even more worried at this time. After all, if the Pei family and the Min family had a grudge against each other, as the Pei family, they would be in the most difficult position. They might even be despised and ostracized by the husband's family. It was still fine for the older generation. After all, they had already taken root long ago. As a new wife, it was the most difficult. Therefore, at this time, not only would they not move forward, but they would also complain about Min Yuhan from the bottom of their hearts. In fact, they couldn't be blamed for this. It was only human nature. Clan leader, what is Min Yuhan trying to do? Not to mention that he's from the ancestors' generation. He's also the same at his age. He's simply looking down on our Pei clan. Someone was filled with righteous indignation. This person was probably someone who had completely linked the Pei clan's reputation to himself. The others also chimed in at the same time. It wasn't without fortune or calamity. One had to know that even if they were from the same clan, it didn't mean that they were of the same mind. Under the same roof, there were serious differences in treatment, not to mention that it was just the same surname. The treatment of the side branch and the main branch was naturally as different as heaven and earth. It was natural that there would be jealousy. It was a rare opportunity to see the main family make a fool of themselves. Therefore, how could they let it go so easily? Patriarch Pei was usually gentle and refined. He was even generous and easy to talk to. However, at this moment, his cold gaze swept over everyone. Even those who were usually the happiest and most lively shut their mouths and kept quiet out of fear. They didn't dare to meet Patriarch Pei's gaze and retreated without a trace. What are you doing here? Go do whatever you need to do. The people surrounding clan leader Pei looked at each other. They suddenly felt bored and resentfully left one by one. Clan leader Pei's mood wasn't so good. In his opinion, Min Yuhan wouldn't do anything after that. However, he never thought that it would be far beyond his expectations. Not only would there be a follow-up, but there would also be such a big scene. As such, he had reason to believe that Min Yuhan might know more than he expected. There might even be things that he didn't know. There was another point that clan leader Pei cared about. Min Yuhan was actually a loner. After his father passed away, the two brothers split up. However, his father was also angry at him for being sentimental. Before his death, he warned him that he wouldn't leave a single copper coin for that unfilial son. However, Min Yuhan's brother wouldn't really abandon his brother. He never lacked for food and clothing. Moreover, he bought the best things. However, he didn't have any more. He didn't have any private property or a private house. Regardless of whether his brother was following his father's orders or acting out of selfishness, Min Yuhan didn't need anything. With such a big scene this time, it was obvious that it wasn't Min Yuhan's personal action. He couldn't afford to have such financial resources. Then, clan leader Pei had reason to suspect that this was no longer Min Yuhan going against him. Instead, it was Min Shi going against Pei Shi. The seriousness of the problem wasn't just rising by one level. With Min Shi taking the lead, the other in-laws, who were already itching to make a move, might also take this opportunity to make a move. Clan leader Pei's eyes were filled with malice. He was like a ferocious beast that wanted to devour people. Although clan leader Pei could easily dismiss the people around him, Pei Xiuying wasn't so relaxed. She was the eldest sister of the fourth generation. For a family with a strict hierarchy, it was naturally easy to dismiss the younger sisters. It was also easy for the collateral relatives to dismiss the older sisters. However, there were many aunts who were a generation older than her. Those who were born from concubines would restrain themselves. At this time, they would only make a few sarcastic remarks. The ones who really didn't get along with her were the twin sisters. They were a generation older than Pei Xiuying, but they were younger. Their mother was the second wife, and their family background wasn't high. At first, because they were twins, they were very rare for a long time. However, as they grew older, their appearance couldn't be compared to Pei Xiuying. After they started learning, they couldn't be compared to her in all aspects. The twins were very eye-catching. However, with Pei Xiuying in front of them, they were naturally overshadowed. Furthermore, as the head of the family, everyone knew that clan leader Pei liked Pei Xiuying. As a result, even if there wasn't any enmity, it became an enmity. Who knew how much enmity stemmed from jealousy? And what right did she have? This was a rare opportunity. How could they leave so easily? People said things like, "Oh my, Pei Xiaoying, you're really charming." Uncle Min even came to propose marriage. Uncle Min has deep feelings for that auntie. Now because of you, he actually broke his stubborn principles. Pei Xiaoying, everyone says that you're as talented and beautiful as that auntie. You really are very similar. Uncle Min is so sincere. Pei Xiaoying, you should marry him. Isn't grandfather ashamed of Uncle Min? Grandfather dotes on you so much. This is a good time for you to show your filial piety. Although you might become a widow after a few years, you don't have to worry about concubines, right? Get out. Even if she was well educated, she couldn't help but have a cold expression at this time. Oh my, are you angry? My dear niece, haven't you always considered yourself to be the most virtuous lady? This isn't how you should be. Or is my dear niece also a hypocrite who acts one way in front of others and another behind others' backs? I really should let grandfather and grandmother see you like this. Seeing that you're my elders, I won't argue with you. Do you think I don't have a temper just because I've tolerated you again and again? Get out of here immediately. Otherwise, I'll make you kneel in the ancestral hall for a few days. Do you believe me? Pei Xiaoying said coldly. The two sisters had never seen her like this before. They seemed to be intimidated by her aura and couldn't help but take a step back. Their expressions were particularly ugly. However, they also knew that Pei Xiaoying's words were not nonsense. If she told the truth in front of their grandmother, they would be punished. Pei Xiaoying, I want to see if you can continue to be so imposing. Sister, let's go. After they left, Pei Xiaoying no longer put on any airs. She sat down and clenched her fists. Her eyes were terrifyingly cold. Pei Xiaoying was the same as her great-grandfather. She probably didn't think that Min Yuhan would be so ruthless. At this moment, her hatred was monstrous. However, she also knew that this matter would be left unsettled. No matter what, if they went to the woman's side to propose marriage and the woman's family didn't allow it, there was no reason to force it. Their Pei Shi wasn't a soft persimmon that anyone could pinch. In the end, Pei Shi was still in decline and had no power. If Pei Shi was as prosperous as the previous dynasty, even the imperial family would have to give way. As a noble daughter of Pei Shi, she was even more honorable than a princess. If that was the case, how could a mere Min Shi be so arrogant? An old fart dared to covet her and humiliate her. At this moment, Pei Xiaoying became more and more determined. She must use Jin Qin Wang to ascend the throne. She must become the most honorable woman in the world. In reality, just as Pei Xiaoying thought, this was at most a farce. It looked so lively, but in reality, not to mention Min Yuhan, the main character, there wasn't even a decent manager. The so-called marriage proposal didn't have the slightest bit of sincerity. It was more like a pure humiliation to Pei Shi. After this incident, although the two clans wouldn't completely fall out, there wasn't much difference. After chasing away Min Shi's people, Pei Shi looked at the red silk boxes in the courtyard. Since it wasn't for a good, then obviously, Min Shi wouldn't be so stupid to prepare a generous gift. He ordered people to open the boxes. Sure enough, there was something inside, but it was more or less the same as an empty box. Pei Shi was surrounded by dark clouds. The people around him didn't dare to breathe. They even wanted to find a hole to hide in and disappear. Min Shi? Good, very good. Pei Shi clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. Prepare a generous gift and send all these things back to Min Shi. Although it seemed like Min Yuhan was the one who did it, the furious Pei Shi wouldn't let Min Shi off so easily. If he didn't teach them a lesson, they would really think that Min Shi was easy to bully. Let all the Min Shi send the things back. Truth be told, as a leader of a clan leader Pei venting his anger on a woman from the inner residence was something that many people despised. Once a woman married into the Pei clan, she would become a member of the Pei clan. One of them was even a generation older than him, and she also had a son and a daughter. For generations living under the same roof. Doing something like this was another way of driving her back to her maternal family. Wasn't this also a form of humiliation? However, the people around him didn't dare to say anything. There were some smart ones who sensed that something was wrong and hurried back to the backyard to find Peshur's wife. They didn't want to cause internal problems in Peshur before they could repay Minshur. As expected, the faces of the Pei Min clan members turned green with anger when they heard the words of the Pei clan leader, especially the eldest of the Pei Min clan. He had always been a vegetarian and a compassionate person, but now he was so angry that he smashed things. Pei Jishur is too much. The others might have swallowed their grievances, but this one didn't. No matter what, it was Peshur's fault. Just as he was about to confront Patriarch Pei, the patriarch's wife rushed over. She tried her best to appease him, but even so, she was still rudely chased out of the house. She had lived like a princess for many years, especially after she became Peshur's wife. She had never been so humble before. It was impossible to say that she didn't have any resentment. However, she had no choice but to endure this. She swallowed her anger and went to find Peshur. In Peshur, especially in the main residence, Peshur's words were the law. His wife, children, and grandchildren could only obey him. They had been husband and wife for decades, so she understood him well. However, he was a man who didn't consider this matter. She couldn't ignore it. Otherwise, if word got out, her good reputation would be ruined. For Peshur, it would be one disaster after another. Fortunately, Peshur wasn't completely obstinate and didn't listen to her. It's my fault. Fortunately, Madam stopped me. I will personally apologize to Auntie later. Peshur's wife nodded. If that's the case, I will go back first. She didn't have much to say to her husband, who treated her respectfully. As such, Pei Minshur, who was of high seniority, managed to escape. The others weren't so lucky. It was obvious that the collective return of the Min clan had caused quite a stir in Min County. As the head of the Min clan, he was naturally furious, especially when he saw the generous gift of the Pei clan's return. It made him grit his teeth in anger. However, it was this gift that made the head of the Min clan wary of taking action. Even if it was an aristocratic family, there were many dirty things. Of course, it didn't matter if it was just an internal matter. However, what Peshur sent over was the evidence of Minshur's officials. It was so detailed that it made people feel that Peshur's people had seen it with their own eyes. They had been in-laws for generations, but they did such things in private. How could they not be angry? In comparison, Min Yuhan didn't have much of a reaction. After understanding Peshur's character, these things, in his opinion, were not strange at all. However, his elder brother was using him to make trouble for Peshur. The more obscure point was that he was preparing to bite off Peshur's flesh. He had this idea long ago, but there wasn't a good time before. Min Yuhan didn't care. These things, why don't you give them to Jin Qinhuang? Minshur's clan head was startled. Fourth brother, are you sure? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653780. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, Bicken.com. Chapter 323. Jin Qinhuang is not so easy to use. Peshur will end up with nothing in the end. These things seem to be very disadvantageous to us now. Rather than leaving them in the hands of that old thing and making us very passive, it is better to send them directly to Jin Qinhuang. According to Jin Qinhuang's current attitude, he does not have the intention to completely reorganize the Jiangnan officialdom. It seems more like he wants those officials to spit out how much they have eaten. even if the officials from our Min clan are a little greedy. But in the end, they have Min clan to rely on. They are not lacking in money, and their greed is limited. As for those who are stained with human lives or whose hearts are too black and embezzle too much, these people are like malignant tumors. For the sake of Min clan's foundation, it is better to directly give them up. However much the clansmen have embezzled, that amount will be returned. According to Min clan's foundation, it doesn't matter even if it is a few times more. In this way, the things that old thing Peisher has in his hands are just like waste paper. What if Jin Qinhuang still wants to pursue this matter? Moreover, are you sure that Jin Qinhuang will not pursue this matter just because he said so? These are only a portion of people involved. Pursuing this matter will not take their lives. At most, they will be dismissed and will not affect the foundation of Min clan. Moreover, after tearing apart with Peisher, Min clan will have no obstacles in the court in the future. As for whether Jin Qinhuang has the final say or not, eldest brother, do you really think that Jin Qinhuang is the same as the news from the capital? What do you mean? Min clan head's face became more solemn. The literal meaning. That's right, the literal meaning. There was no need to say more. As the head of an aristocratic family, he was usually very good at thinking. The head of the Min tribe lowered his eyes and pondered quietly. Min Yuhan sneered in her heart. That old thing Peisher wants to use Jin Qinhuang to revive Peisher. Not only that, he also wants to ascend to the sky in one step. Unfortunately, Jin Qinhuang is not isolated and without help. Peisher's help may not be as good as chicken ribs to him. That old thing's heart is too big and unwilling to pay. Such a person, as a leader, no one will like him. What Peisher can do, Minshir can also do, and can even do more and better. As an aristocratic family, it is not wise to take sides in the struggle for the throne. Aristocratic families were too large and had branches. They had a foundation and foundation, so there was no need for them to stake everything on a single throw. The safest way was to choose a side, and it would be best to choose only a portion of the people. Even if they lost in the end, it wouldn't hurt the family too much. After all, generally speaking, the final winner wouldn't do such a crazy thing as exterminating the entire family who supported the loser. If they met an emperor who was open-minded or wanted to save face, they might even put him in an important position. And if they won, the entire family would benefit. The mockery in Min Yuhan's heart deepened. Actually, these people were essentially the same. It was just that his brother was not as shameless as that old thing Peisher. He still stuck to his bottom line. In the past, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong. But now, no matter how he looked at it, he didn't feel good. However, as long as it didn't conflict with what he was doing, it naturally didn't matter. Riches and honor are sought from danger. Prince Jin doesn't need insignificant things. If he wants to do it, he naturally has to do his best. The aristocratic families, now, are not like the time when they could control the country with the emperor. If they want to go further, they naturally can't be afraid of the slightest thing. Peisher has been recognized as the #1 aristocratic family in Jiangnan for a long time. Even if they withdrew from the court, they still maintained it. Now that they are destined to decline, the Minshir might be able to replace them. Because he understood, Min Yuhan easily grasped his brother's weakness. Sure enough, he saw a flash of light in his eyes. Min Yuhan wanted to do his best to help Prince Jin ascend the throne. Borrowing the power of the Minshir was the best choice. Although the other party might not need it, he still wanted to do something. In the end, Prince Jin, how confident are you? 70%. Speaking of which, this was still conservative. According to him, it should be 100%. Because he believed, and because some things were not allowed to fail. I need to think about it. The head of the Min clan clenched his fist. It could be seen that his mood was not stable. It should be. After all, this is a matter of great importance. Elder brother is the head of the clan. It should be serious. Min Yuhan nodded as a matter of course. The head of the Min clan twisted his beard and nodded, regarding Pei Xiuing. If Yuhan really takes a fancy to her, it's not impossible to take her in. If I really take her in, the one who will be humiliated will be Bayan. The original purpose was to find some trouble for Pei Shi and shave Pei Xiuying's reputation. If that old thing could really stop and not find trouble for Prince Jean, of course it would be for the best. However, it was clear that this possibility was not high. Speaking of which, if Pei Xiuying didn't willingly lower herself and had thoughts of her own, Min Yuhan would not act like this. After all, she was a beautiful young lady. At his age, he wouldn't make things difficult for her. It was just that to say that she brought it upon herself. But from the perspective of those who thought that they could contribute everything to the clan, they would probably never do anything wrong. I'll go back first. And go back and rest. Min Yuhan left. He was very clear that this elder brother of his would definitely agree. Even now, the title of the #1 aristocratic family was still moving. Sure enough, the head of the Min clan found Min Yuhan the next day. This is a matter of great importance. Fourth brother, I'm afraid that you will have to make a trip personally. Speaking of this, there was some difficulty on his face. A few days ago, this fourth brother fainted after seeing Prince Jean. This time, he came to find him again. If fourth brother doesn't want to go, I will find someone else. It's fine. A few days ago, I just suddenly saw him and couldn't control myself. In fact, he didn't dare to look directly at Prince Jin's face. He was afraid that he would lose his composure and do something impolite, causing the other party to be unhappy. Fourth brother, you don't have to make things difficult for yourself. Although he said so, his expression still showed that he wanted Min Yuhan to make a trip. Min Yuhan thought, sure enough, he had been the head of a clan for too long. Everything he did was so hypocritical. He was like this even in front of his own brother. So what if he was a little more honest? Thus, Min Yuhan didn't say much and directly took the things prepared by the head of the Min clan. Then, he had people prepare a carriage and headed to Chuanzhou Prefecture. As for those grandmothers who came back from Pei clan, of course, Min clan wouldn't treat them badly. On the contrary, they would take good care of them. To a certain extent, they were even prepared for their return. At this time, Shannon Prefecture's provincial examination had already ended. Because Prince Jean was personally holding the line naturally, there wouldn't be a situation where the examination papers were marked based on personal preferences. No matter if one liked to use flowery words or upright words, they were all thrown to one side. In short, one had to have substance. Of course, good handwriting was also important. The top 3 were not personally selected by Li Hongyuan, but it was also nodded by him. In short, no one would be stupid at this time. After this matter was completely finished and the hearts of the scholars were appeased, Li Hongyuan seemed to remember that Governor Xiujing was detained in his own house. Li Hongyuan personally interrogated Governor Xiujing of Shannon Prefecture. The officials of the academy, who were originally very tense naturally, became even more tense at this time, not to mention those who had problems. Li Suyen, this black-robe guard, was very good at interrogating people. Prince Jean was also not bad. They didn't know the process of his interrogation. In short, in less than 2 hours, the black-robe guards were dispatched again. Other than Chuanzhou Prefecture, the other prefectural cities of Shannon Prefecture had sent people. It was obviously a big move. And this Governor Xiujing was also officially stripped of his official hat and official uniform, preparing to be escorted back to the capital. When Li Hongyuan returned to the residence, Jingwan inexplicably felt that there seemed to be a bloody smell on his body. But when she sniffed carefully, it seemed that there was nothing. Wan, what are you doing? Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows, puzzled. Smelling your body to see if there's the smell of rouge and powder. Jing Qian smiled. Is that so? You have to smell it properly. Li Hongyuan used the back of his finger to gently rub her cheek. Perhaps it is on my body. Wan, do you want to help this husband change clothes first? He lowered his voice and leaned close to her ear. From time to time, he would perform his seductive techniques. Jingwan still couldn't resist. And Min Yuhan just happened to come to the door at this time. In reality, Li Honyuan already knew about the things that happened in the main residence of Pei clan. As for the details, he didn't know. The reason was still the same. Those who served the masters closely were basically the children of the household. To turn these people into nails was difficult. To a certain extent, it was like a wave of the heart. Naturally, he was too lazy to do anything. However, even though he didn't give the order, the people who lived in Jiangnan couldn't be completely useless. They didn't need to go too deep. Actually, Jingwan was also a little interested. This imperial noble consort's former fiancé could also be considered a sentimental person. He was also quite ruthless in his actions. Pei family and Min family's interests had been tied together for many years. Perhaps there had been some cracks in recent years, but they had also been hidden very deeply. This time, even if they had not completely fallen out with each other, there was an obvious hostility between the two families. Li Honyuan went to see Min Yuhan and brought Jingwan along. Naturally, it was Min Yuhan's first time seeing Jingwan. Of course, it was just a hurried glance. He vaguely remembered that last year at the summer palace in Qingde, Jin Qinhuang had to calculate 100 times to marry the woman he liked. Thinking about it, it should be this Jin Qinhuang Fei. Looking at Jin Qinhuang Fei's attitude, it should be known that he really put Jin Qinhuang Fei in his heart. People like Pei clan head would suspect that Li Honyuan was acting, but Min Yuhan wouldn't. Because he loved deeply, he clearly knew this true feeling. It was said that Jin Qinhuang Fei liked beauty. As long as it was a beauty, he could ignore everything else. It was really wrong. It was also said that Jin Qinhuang Fei was jealous, fierce, and intolerant. In his view, that was also Jin Qinhuang Fei's own intention. Because he loved her deeply, because he doted on her like she was the apple of his eye, he didn't want her to be wronged. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653784. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 324. Of course, Min Yuhan wouldn't ask why Jingwan was here. Instead, she simply explained her intentions. Li Honyuan wasn't interested in what was presented to him. On the other hand, Jingwan opened the documents and flipped through them. They were sent to the Min family by clan leader Pei. The Min family didn't bother to sort them out. Each person received a piece of paper, which meant that there were more than 10 people involved. However, compared to the Min family, it was just a small matter. Jingwan's eyes narrowed when she saw 2 pieces of paper. She deliberately took them out and passed them to Li Honyuan. Li Honyuan might not accept something handed to him by others, but since it was given to him by Jingwan, he would definitely accept it. He shook the letter slightly and quickly read through it. According to Qi Yuan's laws, if one is sentenced to death, the other will also be sentenced to death. It seems that the Min family wants to save these people, the parasites of Qi Yuan and the scourge of the Min family. These people deserve to die. As a member of an aristocratic family, he always felt that he was superior to others. Moreover, he always thought that he had the support of his family. If he was clear-headed, it would be fine, but if he wasn't clear-headed, he would think that his family could contend against the entire country and could do whatever he wanted. Sometimes it was necessary to teach these people a lesson. At the same time, it was also necessary to make an example out of them. Of course, from Min Yuhan's point of view, it wasn't really for the Min family's foundation. To a certain extent, people who knew what was good for them were more likable than those who didn't know what was good for them. Aristocratic families are indeed aristocratic families. Their actions aren't ordinary at all. Jingwan chuckled. Li Honyuan turned around and saw Jingwan taking out 5 stacks of banknotes. If he wasn't mistaken, there should be 100 banknotes in each stack. The denomination of each banknote was 10,000 taels. 5 million taels wasn't ordinary. Would an ordinary person be able to take out so much money so casually? However, as an aristocratic family, it would be abnormal if they only had a few 100,000 taels. Min Yuhan didn't know how much money his brother had prepared. He didn't open it to take a look, but he had an idea in his heart. This amount wasn't considered small, but in Min Yuhan's opinion, it was still too little. However, he wouldn't say anything. This wasn't within his scope of concern. Min Yuhan, you're a smart person, and I'm not a stingy person. In other words, as long as she didn't do anything that made him unhappy, it would be good for everyone. Rest assured, Your Highness. He originally only intended to help Jin Qinhuang do things and do his best. He was very clear on what should be done and what should not be done. Your Highness, this concubine sees that it's getting late. Why don't we have Mr. Min stay for a meal? What do you think, Mr. Min? Min Yuhan's eyes flashed slightly. No matter what, this kind of thing should be approved by Jin Qinhuang first. Jin Qinhuang Fei seemed to have only said a word, and then asked for his opinion. It could be seen that Jin Qinhuang Fei had a lot of say in front of Jin Qinhuang Fei. It could be seen that Jin Qinhuang Fei's position in Jin Qinhuang Fei's heart was very important. Moreover, the two had not been married for a long time. Jin Qinhuang Fei's birth and upbringing were not bad. To be able to be so casual, it could be seen that she was close to Jin Qinhuang Fei. This was very good. The two knew each other and promised each other. Of course, there was nothing better than this. It's this commoner's honor. Your Highness and Mr. Min can chat first. This concubine will let people prepare. Li Honyuan nodded his head indifferently. Jingwan got up and left. Because there were outsiders, as the host, he naturally had to accompany them. Obviously, he couldn't eat with his wife. This made Li Honyuan a little unhappy. Looking at Min Yuhan, his eyes unconsciously became colder. Min Yuhan was a little inexplicable. He didn't know how he provoked this master. Fortunately, Li Honyuan did not flare up. He casually asked some questions that he wanted to know and that the other party might be able to answer. To Min Yuhan, she naturally told her everything she knew without reserve. It had to be said that apart from other things, Jin Qinhuang Fei and Min Yuhan chatted quite congenially. At first, Min Yuhan was surprised at Li Hongyuan's knowledge and insight. However, he was relieved. This was Wanru's child. Wanru was exceptionally intelligent. Her child naturally surpassed her. Moreover, he was born in the imperial family. Although that place was a dragon's pool and a tiger's den, it couldn't be denied that it was a place that surpassed others. Li Honyuan didn't have any opinion on Min Yuhan's knowledge. To be honest, if Min Yuhan didn't reach this level, he would feel bored and this person would probably be abandoned by him. Lunch was probably a happy meal for both the host and the guest. After that, Min Yuhan took his leave. He didn't ask how Jin Qinhuang would deal with the people of the Min family. He didn't want to ask, and there was no need to. In Qiyuan, after passing the Jinshu exam, although one could return to their hometown to take up a post, this kind of situation was rare. There weren't many people of the Min family in Jiangnan. They were scattered all over the Qiyuan. The two most serious people were not in Jiangnan. Obviously, they needed to settle accounts. Min Yuhan sat in the carriage with his eyes closed, thinking about what to do next. Li Honyuan directly gave the remaining 5 million taels of banknotes to Jingwan and said that it belonged to Jingwan's private property. Wang Yi not only gave his own little treasury to this concubine, but also let this concubine make a little treasury. Jingwan teased. What's wrong? Which woman with a dowry doesn't have private property? Li Honyuan said as a matter of fact. Yes, you're right. Jingwan giggled and hugged him. Don't worry, I will prepare some pocket money for Wang Yi. Wan, do you think that Ben Wang needs pocket money? It seemed that he rarely took out money and basically gave it to his subordinates. Although the amount this time was relatively large, it wasn't a problem for him. It shouldn't be classified as pocket money. Food, clothing, and other things like that. Did he need to take out money? Jingwan stared at Li Honyuan. Well, this was a downright overlord. He belonged to the type that could be unrestrained without money. TSK, what were those people who married into rich families in her previous life? How many millions could they get? What grand gifts could they get? Could they be compared to her? She took it all in her pocket. Things in Chuanzhou are almost done. Let's go sightseeing tomorrow. Li Hongyuan stroked Jingwan's hair. This was almost done? Those in the outer courtyard. Chuanzhou's accounts had been checked clearly. Of course, it was only the accounts on the surface. Li Hongyuan still detained people. Was he preparing to release them? Probably because he knew that they were doing it for money and not for their lives. Those who had relatively thin family assets had already taken out most of it. However, there were some people that Jingwan was 100% sure that their family assets were still very rich. Although those officials' wives had vaguely expressed that they were too poor to eat, these people were already on Jin Qinhuang's blacklist. They were the batch that had to be dealt with. Therefore, Jingwan didn't care. If they didn't give it now, they could only copy it out. Things in Minshan County are already being handled. Let them be released today, and let them be comfortable at home for 2 days. After that, they should be transferred to the prison. This matter shouldn't be made public, right? Of course not. But it can deter people in other places in Jiangnan. This way, the future will be smoother. Jingwan nodded. Chuanzhou's prosperity doesn't lose to the capital. Linchuan River is filled with willow trees. The scenery is pleasant, and there are countless pleasure boats and famous singers. Li Hongyuan continued. Husband knows me best. Jingwan acted coquettishly in his arms. You are a woman. https://www.yangguwaiwo.com/11/11807/6653787. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.yangguwaiwo.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, myangguwaiwo.com. Chapter 325. Li Hongyuan hugged Jingwan and watched her act spoiled and shamelessly in his arms, unmoved, until she looked at him pitifully. He could no longer maintain the cold indifference on his face. He sighed helplessly. Wan, you're a woman. How can you have such thoughts, little? I'm just curious and want to see it. Jingwan was very clear how deviant her thoughts were and how serious the impact on her reputation would be if people knew that she appeared in that kind of place. However, the person in front of her was Li Hongyuan, her husband. They had only been married for 3 months, but it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the person she trusted the most. She didn't have to worry about anything in front of him and could say whatever she wanted. Even the words that she couldn't say in front of her grandmother, she could say to him. Jingwan wasn't clear whether her Jin Wangya's heart was strong enough to accept anything, or his tolerance towards her was particularly high. The latter was more likely, right? It seems that this husband has indulged Wan more and more until she's out of control. Li Hongyuan was not angry. On the contrary, he was somewhat gratified and faintly proud. In fact, he was almost certain that Jingwan's origin was not ordinary. So no matter what Jingwan said, he would not be surprised. Isn't it a Yuan who indulged her? Jingwan continued to snuggle in his arms. And I indulged her. So, no matter what, he had to continue indulging her. Who let her be his sweetheart? Muan, since his master had summoned him, Mu Gonggong naturally slipped in and respectfully waited for his master's order. Go and book the most famous pleasure boat on Linchuan River. Tomorrow, Ben Wang will take Wang Fei to listen to music and enjoy dancing. Mu Gonggong quivered, thinking that he had misheard. He cautiously glanced at Li Hongyuan's cold eyes and shivered again. Yes, this servant will do it. Sure enough, one shouldn't question any of his master's words, and only need to strictly carry them out. He had been by his master's side for so long, yet he hadn't learned even half of his master's skills. He really deserved a beating. However, if the princess consort wanted to go, she had to make sure that the pleasure boat was clean. Apart from the usual items, nothing else was allowed. However, things didn't go very smoothly. In the pavilion pleasure boat, known as the #1 pleasure boat in Linchuan, there was a girl who was going to be married tomorrow. It had been widely announced 3 months ago, and many people were waiting. She was already 2 years late compared to others. Before that, she was a courtesan on a pleasure boat. She only sold her skills, but not her body. Her fame was so great that it spread throughout the whole of Jiangnan. The entrance fee to see her was ridiculously expensive. Many people had been waiting for her to get married. Finally, the day had come. There were many people who had come specially for her. Whether it was the SALT policy or the cheating in the academy examination, such big things could not affect these people's enthusiasm. Of course, it couldn't be said that there would be no impact at all. At the very least, there would be far fewer Guan family members involved. However, what kind of place was Jiangnan? There were a sea of rich people. Whether it was the brothel or the pleasure boat, without these powerful childs, they might make more money. However, even so, Mu Gonggong didn't intend to compromise at all. Not to mention that his master was not a person who would compromise. It was even more impossible to take the princess consort with him. It was not only about their ability to do things, but also about the prince's face in front of the princess consort. If they, the servants, lost the prince's face, they would be skinned alive. Not only did they have to do it well, but they also had to do it as best as possible. Besides, the gaily painting pleasure boat was only so big. Although the gaily painting pleasure boat was mainly used for sightseeing, and there was a big stage behind it, Eunuch Mu still felt that one gaily painting pleasure boat was not enough. It would be more interesting if 8 or 10 gaily painting pleasure boats worked together. Mu Gonggong faced the owner of the pleasure boat, a beautiful woman who was over 40 years old, but still charming. As soon as Mu Gonggong boarded the pleasure boat, he revealed his identity and stated his purpose. Jin Qinhuang came to Chuanzhoufu, and what he did, the entire Chuanzhoufu knew. There were also many rumors about him, especially about his appearance. They didn't know the situation in the capital of Li Hongyuan and only knew that he was a powerful prince. Just based on this point, it could make many people's imagination run wild, especially those women who were addicted to stories and couldn't extricate themselves. They always hoped that one day they would have a wonderful encounter, an earth-shattering and sentimental love, all kinds of twists and turns, and finally become the big winner in life. Jin Qinhuang undoubtedly became the male lead, and Jin Qinhuang Fei became the most vicious person. In the end, she was still cannon fodder, while imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. After Jin Qinhuang arrived at Chuanzhoufu, he basically didn't show his face outside. The officials' welcoming banquet wasn't set up, so it was even more impossible for outsiders to see him. Naturally, they dressed even more fiercely. That legendary character was finally going to show himself outside. His first goal was their pleasure boat. If this was spread out, it would be a matter of great face. But how could the timing be so coincidental? The beautiful woman hesitated, probing whether Mu Gonggong had the possibility of letting Jin Qinhuang participate in tomorrow's coming-of-age ceremony. In fact, if Jin Qinhuang really participated, the one who would lose out would only be her. After all, as long as Jin Qinhuang set a price, it was estimated that no one would dare to compete. Moreover, if he wanted to take the person away, the owner of the boat would have no way to stop him. What kind of person was Mu Gonggong? He naturally understood the other party's meaning in a flash. He looked at the other party with a smile that wasn't a smile. Our Wangya has a nickname in the capital, Living King of El. The other Wangya and princes, regardless of whether they have power or not, he can step on them if he wants to. If he wants to cut them off, then he can cut them off. Moreover, our Wangya's temperament is more solitary and doesn't like to play with others. The meaning of these words couldn't be more obvious. We are all doing business, so we must pay attention to integrity in everything. With a bang, Mu Gongong's teacup fell on the table. The owner of the boat is surprised, right? Facing such a colossus like the imperial quartz Wangya, even if the owner of the boat had a backer, she wouldn't dare to show her face at this time. She couldn't help but feel a burst of bitterness in her heart. Nu Jia obeys. When the time came, Jin Qinhuang would leave in a carefree manner. Because her pleasure boat was untrustworthy, and there was a 90% chance that she would lose the lead that she had painstakingly cultivated. She would inevitably lose a lot of guests. Moreover, their pleasure boats were prevalent here, and the competition was unusually fierce. Every year, there would be a ranking battle. Her pleasure boat had already won the first place for 3 years. The several families behind were all eyeing covetously. They would certainly take this opportunity to ruthlessly step on her pleasure boat, and it was possible that they would squeeze out the top 10 in an instant. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6653791. HTML chapter error. Click here to report registration is exempted. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Bicken. Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken. You're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.